The title reign that was or is that blown out of proportion? Personally, I was hyped back then for a Dean Ambrose title reign. I felt that he was the most wronged member out of the Shield. Roman was their guy. Seth was always near the top, but Dean, I thought he was punching below his level. It also didn't help that he was massively over. At the same time, the hate for Roman was at an all-time high, and there he was. Dean as this guy who the fans gravitated towards to be the champion. So they booked him in a match with Brock Lesnar. But then the bell rang, and I, along with many of you, thought that was it. They used none of the weapons that were brought to him by the legends, and Brock was like, I got a UFC, you gotta shut up. It was awkward, and on the positive though was that Money in the Bank was coming up, and they didn't try to trick everyone. The intention was clear that Dean was gonna win that briefcase and cash in on the same night. The only guy that had a chance in that match looking back was Kevin Owens, and I remember having some doubts over the results, but they did it, and I was like, it's happening. The idea of the Shield winning the title on the same night is just enticing. Fast forward to the end of the night, Roman and Seth have a decent match. It's not must watch, and in a way, it felt underwhelming for me. It's good though, you know. But Seth caught Roman to win the title clean, and it was a ridiculous result at the time. They were pushing this tweener Roman who was constantly telling us that he's the guy or whatever, and already they ended his title reign? Why would they? Oh, I see. But anyways, Rollins was a two-time champion. All is well, then Dean Ambrose's music plays and he catches Seth off guard. That crowd explodes, they couldn't believe it. Seth pays for his sins as he did the same to Roman, and he hits the dirty deeds. 1, 2, 3. Fans rejoice, and thinking about it at the time brings a smile to my face. Dean was by far my favorite at the time. Seth coming back was cool and all, but this was a long time coming. And it was somewhat surreal because he was constantly taking L's in the main event, and that's evident by the crowd. They wanted this. It's easily one of my favorite moments from the past decade, and it's also nice that each member of the Shield held the title on the same night. It was a wild night on general. On one side you had a heated Game 7, and on the other you had this great Money in the Bank pay-per-view event, if my memory serves me correct, because I haven't watched it since then, barring the main event. Kicking off Raw the next night, the new champion spoke about his victory the previous night. Before he could, the fans showered him in a "You Deserve It" chant, and he told a story about the previous night and how it's a blur before mentioning the title win. It was a splendid thing that Seth Rollins experienced what he did at Money in the Bank, and he said that this was a prime example of what goes around comes around. He also said that his victory is proof that hard work pays off. Since all the names were taken, you know, the man, the guy, he called himself the dude. It didn't matter as long as they called him champion as well. He said that all the trials and tribulations were worth it, and all of a sudden Roman Reigns interrupted. Since this was eye contact's Roman, they booed him, and he said that last night wasn't his night, it was Dean's. He congratulated him and asked, so how did it feel to cash in on Seth? The champion said he would have done the same thing to Roman, and the fans began chanting, "You can't wrestle." He told him to shut up and challenged the dude. Before he could even accept, Seth ran out there shouting, "No, no, no," and whined about how it took him 7 months to return and said that it was his night, but this guy had to ruin it. Rollins told Roman to go back to the line so he could challenge for the title he never lost. To him, Dean stole it. Roman felt that there was an easy way to solve this problem. Shane McMahon had to come out in order to book a #1 contenders match between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. The rematch goes down 2 hours later, the fans still hate Roman, and it was intense. Both men showed heart and resiliency, but ultimately, neither man won this match. So Shane came out, and Dean decided, you know what? I'm a fighting champion. I want both men on the same night. Michael Cole's confused, and Shane books a triple threat match for Battleground. The Shield triple threat that everyone asked for was going to happen on such a grand stage, that being Battleground. Nobody expected it to happen on such a B pay-per-view, but then again, this was one of the most notable pay-per-views in 2016. Dean reminded everyone that he ain't no joke and even dropped Roman with the dirty deeds. Seth was left unscathed for all of 2 seconds because he took one as well. In light of Roman's suspension, Seth Rollins felt embarrassed as he was the same man that brought him in with the Shield. The architect mocked him, saying Roman never apologizes, let alone to his family or friends, as he's the same guy who's all about one versus all. You guys remember that catchphrase? I'll just talk about owning it as a joke, and if anything, Seth owns Roman himself, and the proof's in the results of their matches. He also said that Roman doesn't deserve a second chance, and basically, Rollins wanted Roman removed from the Battleground main event because it would greatly benefit him and his chances. Dean interrupted and started showing off with the belt to incite anger within his old brother. Ambrose felt that Rollins possibly was more angry at the fact that he's holding the title than he is at Roman. Everyone makes mistakes, and he refused to cancel the triple threat. AJ Styles, of all people, agreed with Dean, but he wanted himself in the match instead of Roman. He was desperate to feature and even accepted a fatal 4-way match as long as he's in the match. The champion was cool with this, but you know who wasn't? John Cena. The face that runs the place saw that Dean was a fighting champion and wanted in. Rollins began doing the shouting, leading to Stephanie coming out. Seeing as Cena and AJ Styles wanted in on the match, Seth Rollins has to face John Cena. AJ Styles faces the WWE champion Dean Ambrose, and whoever wins is added to the match. Work Rey Cena emerged in Seth's match and gave him a hard time. These two always have good matches, and this was just that. The club, though, distracted Cena, leading to the pedigree and Rollins' victory. Similar to these two, AJ and Dean delivered, and it was a nice precursor to their future matches. But then again, this is 2016 AJ Styles, who was essentially a GOAT. This man will have a classic match with a fish. John Cena interfered this time around, and Dean took advantage. Rollins was joyous and returned the favor from the previous week. On the July 11, 2016 episode of Raw, the Architect Seth Rollins held the first edition of Rollins Report. His guest, Roman Reigns. This is once again where my memory is a little fuzzy. I seem to remember the Rollins Report debuting much earlier than July, right? With that said, he basically admitted that he was a fraud and felt that he didn't deserve to be in the Battleground match because he's going to continue to be a horrible person. What I find funny is that the crowd didn't want him in the match too. The WWE champion came in and made a joke out of his old friend Sawyer Spine, saying his title reign is a joke. Why? Because he stole his title. Rollins intelligently tried goading Dean into a one-on-one title match, saying that he had multiple title shots last year and failed to win. Battleground to him wasn't only about the title. It was about who was the best member of the Shield. To Rollins, it was to ensure the fact that he's always been better than Ambrose and Roman. He was very bitter and frustrated over that title loss, and it showed. This flipped the switch in the champion. It wasn't about jokes here, and said that in the past, he was a utility player. Whenever others left for Hollywood, he had to carry the company, and it's fun. You know, he enjoys being that guy who works hard, having those great matches and all that. He also reminded Seth of the hell that he went through to get the title and asked, how far will I go to keep it? He even went as far as to say that Roman, Seth, Vince, God himself has to pry the title away from him, and because of this, he doesn't want a one-on-one match at Battleground. He wants it anytime else. Rollins was motivated and confident, but preferred next week. Great promo from Dean. Often there's moments where he's all jokes, but here it was nothing but intensity, confidence, and a man who was absolutely assured that he was the best in the business, and the best in his eyes faces anybody or anything coming his way. Otherwise, why would you call yourself the best? With regards to the title match, yeah, it's a hidden gem. The match also had huge ramifications on the draft, as whoever won this match was probably going to be first overall, although by the sounds of it, Rollins was going to be the first pick for Raw anyways. That said, let's talk about it quickly. Early on, the WWE champion dominated. He out-wrestled Seth, but after the commercial break, the Architect was properly integrated into the match. He was taking it slow and inflicting damage, not going for something dangerous, but when Dean started fighting back, he got more aggressive and switched up the pace. Once the champion connected with a reverse neckbreaker, the match started to pick up. Rollins went for this huge frog splash that got him a near fall. Ambrose was countering a buckle bomb, high knee, a failed frog splash, and these two were wilding and pulling out all the stops. How did I forget about this spot in itself? Rollins rebounded with a pedigree. 1, 2, no. The thing is, even though the pay-per-view was near, it wasn't out of the realm to see a title change here because it would show that the TV shows are unpredictable ahead of the draft. Then the ref got knocked down and Rollins hit a superplex. 1, 2, 3. The fans were booing and it was awkward. Stephanie grabbed that title and announced that Seth Rollins was a champion. He's ecstatic. Ambrose is livid, and this is how the show concluded. However, on the network, the problem was solved. Shane grabbed the mic and said that Dean Ambrose is still a champion. They play his music, and then the referee asked for the replay. The only time they've ever asked for a replay. Well, one of only 5 times, or I don't even know. But anyways, this was confirmed to be a draw, and even though Rollins didn't win the title, he still proved that he can beat the champion. Ambrose is all fired up, so Rollins attacks and steals the title. Not for long though, as his ego got the best of him and he took a dirty deed. Good match. It was getting real heated and dramatic, and of course they couldn't go all out because of their upcoming match, but it's a decent watch. As expected, Smackdown drafted Dean with their first pick, while Raw got Roman and Seth. Later that night, he faced Rollins in yet another title match, and instead of wasting time, Rollins attacked before the match began. After the commercial break, the bell rings, and right out of the gate, Seth continues where he left off with an intense onslaught. Ambrose had a total of 0 offense, while Rollins was putting in the work, dropping in with backbreakers, headlocks, powerbombs, and as time went on, he started dishing it, but definitely not to the extent that Seth was, until the challenger got ahead of himself. Comeback sequence, and it's basically a light version of their previous match. Rollins even hit the superplex, but no pinfall attempt, and instead, Ambrose caught him with the dirty deeds to retain the title and prove that he can beat Seth once again. Not as good as the Raw match. It was just a way of having the champion look extremely strong heading into the pay-per-view. Because as you guys know, Rollins never lost to Ambrose clean in the past. And even though there was this one time where he did, it didn't really count. Throughout the build, Roman was gone. He disappeared because of the wellness policy violation, but he was here now. The pre-match promo evaluated just how much the trio had evolved. From being the confident upstarts to a united front that seemed indestructible, until one man was poisoned with promises of a spectacular career, a grandeur life, all that. He didn't hesitate to take that opportunity, and that is the reason why the Shield was in shambles. And the problem though is the build felt more like Smackdown versus Raw rather than the Shield story. They tried to do that by having Seth proclaim himself to be the best member of the Shield, but Roman wasn't there and there was an ongoing draft, so it was a little hidden. The main story was clearly Smackdown versus Raw, and if you go a little down below, it's a bit of a Shield story, but it's not exactly a Shield story as it should have been. It didn't have the proper build because of these things, and if you watch the promo for that match, which was something special, it's one of my favorite promos of the past decade, it's deceiving. It tries showing that this is a Shield story, but it clearly wasn't for the most part. But anyways, Seth Rollins received a welcoming reception. Roman, they still hate him. Dean, you know exactly what they did. I loved this match 6 years ago. I loved watching it 4 years ago. What about now? Let's talk about it quickly. Rollins wanted to do the Shield gesture, but he got his. Seth was kept away for a while, and even when he re-emerged, he was back outside of the ring. The Architect finally bounced back minutes later and aggressively dominated on the outside until his overzealous nature got the best of him. Flying clothesline from the champion, an awesome spot came from out of nowhere as Rollins suddenly caught Ambrose with a frog splash nobody saw coming. Roman finally got his turn to dominate, and he did just that, looking like an unstoppable force. This is when the crowd started reacting more. The spots were sudden and cool as well. Roman was such a huge threat that Rollins and Ambrose had to team up, and the fans loved it. Even though it didn't work first, they tried doing it again. Ironically or not, Rollins blasted him with a chair. Roman got his as well. And that was a nice callback to the Shield breakup, Rollins stabs him in the back, and that's what he did here with Dean. And now they're in the final third. Each man was busting out some impactful moves, be it a buckle bomb or a sit-down powerbomb. Then they brought out the finisher, Superman punch pedigree that looked like a 3, then Roman connected with a Superman punch. Fans are already pissed and he hits the spear. Dean runs in, hits the dirty deeds, and the arena's roof was gone. 1, 2, 3. Excellent match. No exaggeration. I was honestly conflicted on how I perceived this match before watching it. I thought, maybe I overrated it. Luckily, that wasn't the case. It had an unpredictable vibe at the time. And I remember watching it for the first time and thinking, this could go any way. Especially with Roman returning. It felt like he was the guy who was going to reclaim his. Like, sure, he violated the wellness policy or whatever, but he was still their guy. But on the topic of the match itself, I liked it then, and I like it now. I had the same feeling I had when watching it in July of 2016, March 2018, and now. That being satisfaction. From bell to bell, it was befitting of a Shield triple threat match, and sure, it could have gone on a bit longer. Sure, it needed a more exciting build with the action. It was great for me. Maybe it's my expectations at the time, it wasn't as high as some other people. People are thinking the Shield match was going to be an all-timer, and was it that? No. But it was good enough, it was good for me. I enjoyed it. I loved how the match was constructed, how it was booked, all that. They established Dean as their guy. This guy, he had the most momentum out of anyone in the company, and it was because of this match. With the WWE Champion on Smackdown now, he was up to fight anybody who came calling. Mauro Ranallo called him the Kingpin, and he was much more serious than before. His next challenger was to be determined by a 6-pack challenge, and it was Dolph Ziggler who shockingly won because they love doing that. Every year they microwave Dolph Ziggler, tease something big, but you know how it goes. The following week on SmackDown Live, the champion had a confrontation with the challenger. Dolph felt that they were similar, and the champion was quick to correct them, saying, no, we're not. Ambrose started talking about how Dolph cares about his appearance and what people think, and he told him straight up that he's gonna lose. Sure, he'll steal the show, do the fancy moves. At the end of the day, though, he's gonna lose. The challenger went on an inspirational speech about how he's worked hard to get here, been pushed back by those in the back, and brought that fire from within. He responds saying no. Why? Because he's better. Ziggler wasn't held down because of conspiracies, and if anything, he's not as good as he thinks he is. The promo was nice. Ambrose was letting out. He wasn't playing no nice guy or a phony person with the usual sports quote, oh, he's definitely a challenging competitor, or they're definitely a challenging competitor, I hope we show up. No. This man showed 100% confidence and even hit Ziggler where it hurts, saying that they're nothing alike, and looking at both men, that's true. Hell, he even insulted him for putting up his title match on the line later that night, saying he expected him to self-destruct later, not after a week. This was in light of Bray Wyatt's attack, so Ziggler's like, I'm gonna put it up on the line, which was unnecessary. Nonetheless, he managed to score the W, but was rewarded with a Wyatt family beatdown. They had yet another confrontation the following week, which resulted in a super kick, an accidental super kick to Dean, who was anything but happy. Tag team main event because they won, all is good, but Dean reminded Ziggler who's champion, and he returned the favor. On yet another edition of Miz TV, Dean Ambrose and Dolph Ziggler were invited for one last confrontation. The Intercontinental Champion started building up Dolph as this unbelievable challenger who nobody expected to have a huge match at SummerSlam, but then he asked the big question. What if you lose? Ziggler, though, was worried about the match and SummerSlam, saying, that's all I care about now, not what comes afterwards. Dean, though, couldn't believe this one bit, feeling he's the same old guy, Even though Ziggler was in form, he's scoring these W's and all that, he was still the same guy in his eyes. Dolph did one of his famous critic and doubter promos, except here it was one of the originals, so it was cool. Ambrose, though, started giving him some doubts, and he asked, well, what if you win the match? It doesn't mean that life is all good. It's much harder. According to Dean, Dolph was allergic to success, and if anything, is proud of being the star of some stupid movie. The pressure's going to get to him, and that chip on his shoulder is going to weigh him down. At SummerSlam, Dolph was going to prove that he never wanted it bad enough. The challenger responded saying that Dean didn't know a damn thought that was racing in his mind. Whatever he does, it's not enough to put him away. Every move, every ounce of energy, it won't be enough. And all of a sudden, he delivers his sudden super kick, and Miz was loving what he had saw. Ziggler then said that Sunday is when Dean's going to realize he's that damn good. Decent build. With Ziggler, it's hard to buy he's a viable challenger, but it also established SmackDown as a land of opportunity. Because if Ziggler could get a title match, then any other mid-carder could. With that said, it is bizarre to see that Dolph was challenging for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam, because when you think of SummerSlam, you're not going to think of Dolph Ziggler versus Dean Ambrose. Dean Ambrose versus Bray Wyatt might have been a SummerSlam marquee match at the time. About the match itself, So let's talk. The intensity was there before the match even began. Both men were ready to destroy each other. JBL buried McGregor, saying these two are adult size, and in the beginning, there was a sense of urgency from both men to get something done. Dean, the champion, was the dominant one and the de facto heel of the match. Ziggler had to dig down deep to catch Dean with a dropkick, back and forth action, not that intense. And the thing is, the problem with the match is, it didn't switch to a higher gear. It reached a certain point, and that was it. There was a moment where Ziggler caught Dean with a zigzag, but other than that, Then came the moment where Ziggler wanted to drop Dean with a facebuster of sorts, but then the champion realized, hey, I'm wrestling Dolph Ziggler, and hit dirty deeds. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes styles clash. Both men were in great form heading into the event. From a promo and in-ring standpoint, they were delivering, but here, that wasn't the case. The finish was so sudden, the match was very underwhelming. Maybe if it was on any other night, it probably would have worked. We also got to mention that John Cena and AJ Styles did what they do best minutes earlier, and these two had to follow up. So it's very unfortunate how the match went down, and I just remember thinking, like, that's it? Some also felt that this win against Ambrose. However, there was another awkward, underwhelming thing. That was the Stone Cold podcast. Watching this again, it was kind of awkward. And it was at its worst when Austin was asking about Dean's personal life before wrestling. Other times it wasn't bad, and in the end, Austin wanted Ambrose to do far more to bring out the very best in him. Why? Because he's the captain. He's shouting at him, give it to me, give it to me. And Ambrose years later looks at this interview with negativity. Austin, on the other hand, held some regret over the way it went down. Looking back on it, it was bizarre. Neither man connected properly. Multiple reports circulated that Ambrose had heat because of his comments towards management and his shots towards Brock Lesnar for not putting in effort at WrestleMania 32. With the management thing, Ambrose wanted everyone to know that whatever he tries to fight for, begs and pleads for them to do, never happens. He can't do anything about it. It's not like the older days. With that said, I highly recommend you don't watch this podcast. It's not like that YouTube video where it's awkward for an hour, but it just didn't click. There's some decent stuff in it, but for the most part, it's not that good. In amidst Ambrose's title reign, a certain phenomenal one took every opportunity brought forth to him and made the most out of it. AJ Styles. Now, nobody foresaw his run to go the way he did, especially up to this point. He main evented 2 pay-per-views against Roman Reigns, made him look amazing, faced John Cena twice, and even beat him clean as a heel at SummerSlam. Like, damn. He really had the most momentum, barring Finn Balor, who ended up relinquishing the Universal Championship a day later. AJ, in my eyes, was the #1 guy in WWE, and he wasn't even the champion. He ended up being the #1 contender a few days later, but Dolph Ziggler, being Dolph Ziggler, translation whiny, wanted another title shot. If he won, then he's inserted into the match. Ambrose, on the other hand, was in another world. Those two ended up doing something tremendous, and I haven't watched it since then, but I recall this match being so damn good. Styles, though, won and confronted the champion. Cool. I was very interested in the match between the two at the time. They had already wrestled, but pay-per-view matches are a whole different story. The following week, AJ decided to interfere in Ambrose's match with Baron Corbin and landed on his balls. Ambrose was telling him it's going to be fine. This was unfortunately the beginning of his misfortunes. During the dark match, Cena, Roman, and Seth made things from bad to worse. How his balls still exist is anybody's guess. As for his reaction to the footage being played, well, here it is. Their final confrontation ahead of Backlash was interesting. Dean gifted Styles with a bowling trophy because that's the only thing he's getting from him. The challenger felt that the champion was oblivious to his talents. Otherwise, he wouldn't be out here handing trophies. So he showed last week. He called him a soccer mom, leading to the chant. Styles wanted to remind him of this armband. Unlike this trash, he didn't want to be handed anything, and John Cena took him seriously. Basically, what AJ Styles is saying is that John Cena took him seriously and he still lost. He also insinuated that Cena was better than Ambrose, so this caused him to unleash that fire and reminded everyone of the fact that he beat Styles in the past. And he told him that they don't hand out trophies here for the face that comes in second place. Ambrose though didn't have an idea of what was on AJ's mind, and that was Bangkok. Bizarre build. I don't think anybody foresaw this happening. Other than that, this man was red hot and the story felt more about AJ's road to the title rather than another chapter in Dean's run. It was AJ's time, and back then I really wanted Dean to keep the title. I was like, AJ's cool, he'll eventually win it, but after almost 6 years, I see where they're coming from. Styles is the hottest wrestler in the entire company, and it made sense. At the time, a certain portion of the crowd turned on Dean. I remember they were like, oh, he's a boring wrestler, he's this and that. And the crowd here, they were more receptive towards AJ Styles rather than Dean Ambrose. Alright, let's talk about this quickly. AJ took advantage of Ambrose's usual offense and went after the neck. Even then, Ambrose bounced back and dropped AJ with this ridiculous back body drop off the top rope. He does the comeback, fans boo. AJ couldn't find an answer to this onslaught, and even when he attempted the Reliant Calf Crusher, Dean evaded it, only to run into the turnbuckle. He screwed up again, and AJ intelligently hit a knee on that leg. And with this, Ambrose was in a critical position. Calf Crusher in the middle of the ring, and with determination and composure that was cracking, Dean reaches that rope. Fans boo, he did it again, so Ambrose repeatedly bounced his head. The challenger got ahead of himself and paid the price. And with this, Ambrose found his opening. Scratch that, it was back and forth. Bulldog, 450 splash, a baseball slide that damn near ended the challenger, and they were going all out. It took the fans too long to chant, "This is awesome," but when they did, Ambrose was dominant. On the verge of connecting with the crucial Dirty Deeds, AJ shoves him away, realizes it's time to Bangkok, and he does it. Styles clash, 1, 2, 3, new champion. Truly a tremendous match that delivered on all fronts. The fans weren't quite as receptive to Ambrose, which is very rare, and it also shows how popular and how hot Styles was at the time. This was WWE's most popular babyface in the first half of the year, and AJ Styles got them on his side. This was one hell of a match. AJ showed intelligence going after the neck and eventually the leg. The leg work was far more interesting as the match had been going on for a while then, and Styles just showed more versatility compared to Dean. His offense is well known. Styles, on the other hand, was messing around in many ways and was so damn likable even though he was a heel. For Dean, this was one of his best matches of the year, and with Styles, there was more to come. Looking at Dean's title run, it was best to have him lose here. In my opinion, the wrestler who has the most momentum at the top of the card should be champion, and he wasn't that at the time. He started off great with the rounds matches and the Shield triple threat, then Ziggler happened. At the same time, Styles gained momentum, and before you say I'm fanboying, well technically I am, but you can't deny the popularity of the phenomenal one. When you look at the matches Ambrose delivered on TV and pay-per-view, barring the Ziggler match, which was so underwhelming, he was mostly consistent. Promos, he did well there. And you're wondering, like, what's wrong with this run? AJ Styles had beaten John Cena clean, having great promos, all that, and it was best to give him the title at the time. Dean wasn't the number one guy in many's eyes at the time, so yeah. If I could describe this run in one word, it would be overshadowed. As time went on, Ambrose was the number one guy, but after the brand split, literally the week afterwards, Cena and AJ Styles' feud was overshadowing it. Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, all that, and we did have some expectations, but when it didn't deliver, that was it. My favorite match of this run is the Shield triple threat. That was really good. Although I might say the Backlash match is a bit better. I'm gonna lean towards the Shield triple threat match is my favorite, but the Backlash match is probably the best one. They had enough time to build up an amazing story. You know, AJ Styles being one step ahead of Dean with the calf crusher, the work on the leg, all that. AJ Styles' reputation up to 2016 speaks for itself. For a man that emerged during the early 2000s and never even stepped foot in a WWE ring, well, technically, he had an incredible career to boot. The face of TNA, in the fans' eyes of course, multiple-time world champion across multiple promotions including TNA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and Ring of Honor. What makes Styles so good is the combination of skill he has. He can wrestle without the aerial moves, can wrestle a high-flying match, and if you had a disappointing match with AJ Styles, it would look bad on you. Up to 2013, he had a great run, but what elevated him was his incredible turnaround from an icon to a legend. AJ Styles was world class in TNA. At times he could have been considered the best wrestler in the world, but after he grew his hair and started becoming the lone wolf, it was a new chapter in his career. A man whose peak few could reach in the industry still hadn't reached his own. The leader of Bullet Club following Prince Devitt's departure. The group rose to greater heights and many consider it to be the faction's best time. It was very cool, and this man had everything at this point. The super push, the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, and the collection of great matches with the likes of Shinsuke Nakamura, Roderick Strong, Kazuchika Okada, and no doubt about it, surpasses and eclipses his TNA run. Because New Japan foresaw AJ Styles' worth. TNA had him capped at 91 overall, and here, this man was 96 overall and would be a great commodity for any company in the world. It would be a privilege for said company to obtain the services of AJ Styles. It was just up to said company to follow up, and WWE was chosen. They gave him a low offer in 2014, and he turned it down, opting to increase his stock, and it certainly worked in his favor. And AJ was very close to joining TNA, but family comes first, and regardless of the push WWE would give him, it was no doubt about it financially correct. Initially, they wanted to test him out. He was in this feud with Jericho. They had some good matches out of it, but the main story was, would they trust him? Especially after the time where Miz scoffed and undermined his accolades outside of WWE. However, what won Styles in the eyes of Vince was his program with Roman Reigns. There was something special about Styles facing the guy in WWE. It was a position nobody imagined, and he knocked it out of the park. Styles' performance made Roman look better, perform better, and in turn allowed for him to feud with John Cena, but this time as a heel. And this is where he flew high. Styles showed that he could talk, had a different kind of aggression inside the ring, and by July, he was the most interesting character in the WWE. This is a man who Vince said, I should have signed you 10 years ago. That's how successful Styles was, and it was only 6 months into his run. Styles went on to beat John Cena at SummerSlam in an iconic match, and I haven't watched it since then, but I remember feeling satisfied at what I was seeing, because this was a dream match that actually turned out to be a reality, and even the expectations that came with it were met. And with the super push that was flying towards the moon, there was only one thing left to do. The coveted WWE Championship, a title which nobody imagined would come near Styles, but not only did he challenge for it, but at this point he was basically the next champion. And after Dean Ambrose's bizarre interview with Stone Cold and the fact that Styles' momentum was red hot, his moment came sooner. After a comedy feud with Dean Ambrose about kicking another in the balls, both men had a strong match at Backlash, a match which brought the best out of both men. Styles managed to bounce back with a kick and hit the Styles Clash to win the WWE Championship. So now, the era of Styles had begun. Okay, with that said, on the September 13, 2016 episode of Smackdown, AJ Styles kicked off the show to address his title victory. Styles immediately bragged about his accomplishments, telling the fans, "I told you so." Everything he said he would do, he did. He beat John Cena, now he's the face that runs the place. He beat Dean Ambrose, and now he's WWE World Champion. If he said he would beat them with one hand tied behind his back, it's gospel. The sky is green if he says so, and he then called himself the champ that runs the camp. It fit AJ Styles' heel character so well because as serious as he is, he's got some comedy behind him. And then John Cena interrupted. Now for Cena, it was very simple. He wanted his armband back. This is no problem for AJ Styles, but it turns out Cena's talking about something else. He's like, "I finally decided to take it back." Holding that title one more time means he's in the conversation with the man, and Cena saw no bigger way to make history than beating AJ Styles to do it. When you seen this smile back in 2006 to 2013, you knew what was up here. Not so much. Dean Ambrose followed up and told Styles he made the biggest mistake of his life on Sunday. He had no problems losing matches normally, but because of Styles' dirty win, he's become an enemy of his. He wanted his title back, but Cena had a claim. He thought it was ironic that Dean's complaining when he dropped his jewels on the ropes 2 weeks earlier, then proceeded to say Austin was right to call him out on his podcast. In these last few weeks, he's just shown the fans that he has no balls. And for Dean, this was exactly what he wanted. He didn't give a damn about what John Cena says, and he called him a lazy part-timer and told him that he can't keep up anymore. WWE uses him as a corporate puppet, but regardless, he can't get it done anymore. Shane McMahon interrupted before things escalated. He had plenty of praise for these men, even AJ Styles who had to cheat to win. Then he booked him in a triple threat match against John Cena and Dean Ambrose for no mercy. As for tonight, they gotta team up. Styles, though, has to find a partner. In Styles' efforts to find a partner, he was largely unsuccessful. So he's ready to go out there alone, but Daniel Bryan found him a partner. The chinless wonder himself, James Ellsworth. James Ellsworth was so out of his element, and this image says it all. Like, look at this guy. This guy does not belong here at all. This guy was G League quality, and these guys were basically NBA All-Stars. That's what I compare it to, because he was nothing. The Miz ended up making things right and getting rid of him. Miz ended up getting his ass beat though, and Cena and Ambrose's drama was certainly overshadowing everything else. With those two ready to settle their issues in the match, AJ Styles felt that he was superior to both men. There's no rivalry there with them. That's what he felt. He also held resentment over defending the title in a situation where he could lose without being pinned. Regardless, though, the champion will always be here. These two had a solid match, but ultimately Cena came up short clean. From out of nowhere, AJ dropped Cena with a phenomenal forearm and connected with a Pele kick on Dean. Daniel Bryan was impressed, but then pulled his pants down, saying that Dean Ambrose will get his one-on-one rematch next week. It's going to be for the title. Ambrose rebounds with dirty deeds to show that he's got a chance. For Styles, this wasn't a huge problem. He bragged about beating up both Cena and Ambrose, and all eyes were on him, and he was intending to follow up. John Cena was providing commentary for this one, and early on, Ambrose was very intense on the attack. He was full of fury and aggression, which greatly benefited him. Ambrose slowed down and got technical because the match was asking for it, and Styles had no answer to this onslaught, and it wasn't until after the commercial break that Styles had any semblance of offense. Ambrose's style was growing thin, and AJ's more methodical efforts towards weakening the leg were getting him back into it. Both men were starting to go all out. Springboard 450, the elbow from the top, and Ambrose was hurting. Then they got John Cena involved, and this almost led to the title change, but Cena's interference ruined everything for Ambrose, and AJ retained. Ambrose's biggest mistake was provoking a fresh Cena. Styles too. These three men had one final confrontation the following week, and this one was big. Ambrose called Styles a chump after a 15-year career. He's like, "Oh, you had all the respect," and instead of climbing that last mountain, he takes the low road. Ambrose was more worried over having Styles beaten last week, and it's all John Cena's fault. He should be thanking him for even having a chance at breaking that Ric Flair record. And there's John Cena. Just as he's about to talk, AJ shouts for him to shut up. I'm sure many felt that way about 2003 Triple H, and Styles knew what he was about to say. Cena's chased in history. I'm going to become a 16-time champion. And Styles thought it was deplorable that Cena would even compare himself to an icon like Ric Flair. No matter how many titles Cena wins, he'll never be in the conversation with Ric Flair. He shouldn't be worried about legacy. He should be worried about AJ Styles. chasing history. I make history. That's what AJ Styles was saying. AJ was expecting Cena to make a fool out of himself like SummerSlam, and when he wanted to rebound, Ambrose shut him up. Same thing. He knew what Cena was about to say and tell him to stop complaining and make him look like the jerk even though he got screwed over twice. He's like, oh, this is a political skill. That's what John Cena is good at. That's how Cena's been relevant for 15 years. Ambrose believed Cena wanted to do the same to him. He's like, oh, I work hard. You go to award shows and think you work hard. Nope, I wrestle all the shows, 0 days off. Most matches out of any wrestler last year and the year before that. Ambrose knew Cena had zero respect for him. Why? Because he doesn't play his game and he won't start. If being fake is what it takes to be a superstar in his eyes, he doesn't want none. Then he told him to have fun playing John Cena on TV. Fine speech wasn't to be. Instead, Cena said, talk is cheap and went on the attack. Did Cena make good on this? Well, kind of. Styles followed up before Ambrose hit Dirty D's to pose with the title on top. Okay. Strong build. They actually did something different with Cena. He was portrayed as a potential villain by Ambrose and AJ. Ambrose especially managed to construct a whole new viewing point towards Cena. And when I mean new in WWE, because this stuff's been said about him on the internet and outside of the ring. AJ Styles had every right to be in this feud. He belonged and then some, which is crazy if you look only a year back. He would have belonged a year ago. You know, a year back for sure he would have belonged, but the perception in WWE was a bit different about him. The three men started off No Mercy because of the presidential debate. Great promo for the match with that No Mercy song. And they should just bring back the event just to play that song. But about the match, let's talk about it. Great stuff. There's never a dull moment because number one, 2016 AJ Styles is in there, and two, the triple threat concept. The result seemed out of question, but they still made it entertaining enough. They had a similar spot to Night of Champions 2009 with Styles tapping out, and the match was restarted. The champion had to adapt to the situation to steal the win and retain the title, and that's how it was. It was good. I liked this match. I watched it again for the video. It was enjoyable. The reason why I didn't go about it in details because it's more complicated to give a quick overview of triple threat matches. Those are better suited for the full overview that I usually do on the pay-per-view reviews, but that's not the point. Okay, with that said, later that week on Smackdown, Styles came out and proclaimed himself to be the champ. In his eyes, being Cena and Ambrose, that's not great. That's phenomenal. The man proceeded to call the fans a bunch of losers that live vicariously through him, and even then, there's only room for one on this bandwagon, and told him to cheer for Cena. Then he's like, oh wait, he's not around. So he asked him to cheer for Ambrose, who's actually a lunatic loser. There's no point. About No Mercy, he's like, oh, it doesn't matter how I win. The point is, I beat John Cena and Dean Ambrose. He repeated this like 3 times. Unlike others, he wouldn't take a night off after such a tremendous victory, so AJ Styles wanted to give a man of main event status an opportunity. And Dean Ambrose interrupted. He knew very well that Styles wasn't talking about him because he's all about the easy win. His reasoning for the excuse is because he had to take that opportunity. Ambrose refused to budge. He knew that it was going to come down to them and refused to allow anyone to take his title shot. Styles was like, this man isn't even on the roster, and James Ellsworth came out. The level of shame on Dean's face, you'd think this was him in 2018. And the reason why Styles chose him was because he was robbed of his opportunity last month by The Miz. It was a non-title match, of course. As much as it irritated Ambrose, he wanted to see this front row. Now this is what AJ didn't want to hear. He didn't want to hear this, he wanted him to hop off, but Dan and Bryan though saw it differently. The decision seemed like it wouldn't go down, but Bryan granted the match and made it official. However, Dean Ambrose was going to be the special referee for this one. Of course, AJ couldn't touch him. Ambrose's officiating was straight out of NBA, and this match was very one-sided in terms of officiating. Like, we just gotta say. The referee was bringing back rules from pre-2008 WWE, such as closed fists being banned, and there was some goofy stuff that hadn't been seen in the main event scene, since ironically, Ambrose and Rollins' feud from 2015. The champion wrapped things up at the worst time because Ambrose was taking a phone call. Bro was doing everything but officiate, and I was about to say, I'm shocked he hasn't eaten, but he proved me wrong. Styles had the match won, but Ambrose dropped him with Dirty Deeds. They followed up with another one and did a fast pit. The champion tried complaining about this, but Shane told him that he's to blame. Then they revealed that Ellsworth gets a title shot next week. Styles said that if Ellsworth were to win the title, it would be catastrophic, and compared it to David Arquette winning the WCW title. Ambrose was sitting front row for this match, and he announced both men. He was causing a disturbance inside and outside the ring for AJ Styles, and it was all about distracting the champion. Ambrose was basically making a YouTube video called Trying to Piss Off AJ Styles, He Hit Me. Ellsworth had a huge moment to win with the sweet chin music, and the fans wanted it, Ambrose wanted it, but Styles got himself disqualified. Not out of fear, but because he was so angry and wanted to lash out, get aggressive with him. He was announced as a loser, and Dean hit Dirty D's before calling Ellsworth the winner. So the night of anger and frustration concluded with Styles on his back and Ellsworth as the victor. Ambrose's title shot wasn't going to be granted like that, however, as he had to fight for it, and he had to face the phenomenal one in the main event. Ellsworth was by his side, and Styles, of course, wasn't fond of his company, and vice versa. This led to the Lunatic Fringe getting disqualified, and even then, James Ellsworth managed to find a way to get Ambrose a rematch, but unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to stand by his side in the main event. That didn't matter though, because he ran in near the end and Styles tackled him like he booked his 2012 run in TNA. This distraction was enough for the Dirty Deeds, and Dean Ambrose finally got that title shot he was desperately looking for. The title match was to go down at TLC. With Survivor Series on the horizon, these two were forced to coexist. Styles called James Ellsworth a mutant turtle and threatened to beat both of them up. He had plenty of hatred for Dean Ambrose, but his main focus at this point was to beat Team Raw. Baron Corbin took issue with Styles calling it his team, and the Wyatt family followed up before Dean Ambrose came out and brought the team mascot, James Ellsworth. Now this is where the champion had a problem. This is where he had a problem. He didn't care where Ambrose stored him, he just wanted him out of here. Corbin walked out because he didn't care about any of this, and then Shane McMahon booked the main event tag team match involving those in the ring. He settled things down and tried to convince them to focus in favor of Team Smackdown, and at one point they literally brought back Edge to host the Cutting Edge so he could cut through these problems ahead of Survivor Series. Why him? There's few that identified with the blue brand like the Rated R Superstar. Even The Undertaker had to come out to support these guys. This Survivor Series elimination match caused a perfect storm of chaos. These problems that AJ and Ambrose had boiled over in a huge way. Now, the match itself needs no introduction. It was tremendous. The whole thing was excellent. Sure, I haven't watched it since, but I remember thinking it was one of the best matches of the year. Ambrose hated AJ so much that he sided with his old Shield brothers and took him out. It was the first real Shield reunion since 2014, and Shane McMahon was seething because this almost cost Team SmackDown the match. They won it, but Ambrose was going to pay the price. As for Ellsworth, he got the chance to do something huge, a contract. He was going to get the chance to win a WWE, a SmackDown contract. Even then, Styles was offended because to him, this guy deserved nothing. So he told him to fight for it in a ladder match. This man earned a contract in the end for getting his ass beat, but still wanted to put it on the line. He even told AJ that if he wins, he gets a title shot. To Styles, this was nothing more than a tune-up for his TLC match. It was all set up for him to drop the chinless wonder and move on, but Dean Ambrose was a hater and cost him once again to give James Ellsworth a SmackDown contract. The following week, AJ and Ambrose had one final confrontation ahead of TLC. The champion was more worried about Ellsworth, and Dean had to remind him of what's ahead. The most dangerous match in WWE. So instead of responding, he shoved them and inflicted damage on Ellsworth, who took a Styles clash on the floor. AJ was pissing off everyone in sight. He made fun of the tag team champions, belittled them, and then Ambrose comes in, leading to a brawl. So they ended strong. The build was somewhat hurt by the Survivor Series stuff. They took the comedy route for the most part, but turned it up in the final episode. It's what you would expect from a feud involving these two in 2016. It would be different today, of course. And even then, they still had an intense hatred for each other during this feud. Okay, about this one, it was a nice way to cap off AJ's incredible year on pay-per-view. Every match, this man would come in with a mission. He was wrestling like rent was due. Ambrose played his part, no doubt about it, but the real superstar, like every single match in the last 12 months, was the phenomenal AJ Styles. He had his ways at this point. Anything he touches, it was magic. This man was 2016 LeBron, and he was doing it with ripped pants. Like, his ass was out, but it didn't matter. The match came down to James Ellsworth costing Ambrose the match, taking yet another L like his last name Ellsworth. And this mostly had to do with him thinking he had a chance of winning the title against Styles. That's why it cost him the match in storyline. For Ambrose, it was yet another shortcoming, and I remember at the time there were a lot of memes, a lot of jokes about how this guy was losing all the time. Man was starting to lose a lot like Dolph Ziggler. And this match had some short-term effects for the phenomenal AJ Styles as he suffered a minor foot injury, but it wasn't a big deal. You know, it wasn't even the main topic of a discussion during his promo later that week on Smackdown. Ellsworth thought this was Styles being scared of defending his title, but the champion reminded him that Dean Ambrose was the one that was giving him the wins. His problem with him was over. He beat him. Now James has to deal with this, and that's a lesson he learned almost immediately as Ambrose hit Dirty Deeds a couple of seconds later. This led to Ellsworth being unable to compete and challenge for the title, so a replacement was determined in a fatal four-way match. Since Dolph Ziggler was a living embodiment of TNA wrestling, you know, he goes down, fights back, just basically a survivor, you know. He's not doing well, but he finds a way to survive. He found a way to beat Ambrose and Miz to become #1 contender. That match was going to go down on the final episode of Smackdown, but first AJ Styles had to face James Ellsworth for the title. This was academic. Like, we don't gotta say. AJ even did him a favor and gave him a beating so bad that he disappeared from the main event scene. This man almost turned face for whooping another man's ass. He said that it was finally time to move on to more important things for next year. His mind was already in 2017 because he's got everything done. He doesn't need to ask Santa for anything. Dolph Ziggler reminded him that he's next up for the title, but AJ's like, oh, I forgot about you. Why? Because it's a cakewalk and straight up called AJ a loser. Dolph thought it was ironic because it took 4 tries for AJ to beat James Ellsworth. Then the show started giving his life story about how he's willing to do anything to get that title, and this man in this era was willing to do anything but win. He died, destroying himself, and almost every time it mattered most, this guy would lose. Baron Corbin didn't want to see yet another Ziggler match because 1, he's going to lose, and number 2, he's taken up all the opportunities, and instead he wanted himself. Dolph told him that he earned it, unlike him who was walking on the red carpet. Corbin told him the only reason why he earned anything was because he wasn't around. So it was basically leading to a match between the two. And he assaulted him. Styles, like his theme song says, didn't want none. And Ziggler's demand of facing Baron Corbin came at a price. He had to put up his title shot. Styles got involved with the match after they provoked him, and Daniel Bryan decided to make it a triple threat match for the title. For Corbin, this was the biggest night of his career up to this point. For Dolph, this was a night that didn't come often. And for AJ, a normal day. The thing I love most about AJ Styles is in 2016 is this man was the legitimate definition of big match player. He always showed up when it didn't matter, or in this case it did. The match itself was a tremendous representation of Smackdown from 2016 and 17. Pure vibes, they laid it all out there, and everyone looked cool one way or another. This spot needs no mention. The end of days always looked good, but in this situation, it's on another level. And the result was obvious, but it didn't hurt the match in the slightest. And after it was waiting the returning John Cena. This man didn't even wait for his entrance music. He came out to offer a handshake because he wanted this title shot. The champion instead preferred to lay his title and finally follow through. So the match was confirmed for the Royal Rumble. John Cena's journey of cementing his legacy as an all-time talent by winning the title for the 16th time. Against AJ Styles, cementing the fact that he's better than the face that runs the place. The following week was the contract signing. Styles didn't understand why Bryan was doing this. It was unnecessary because himself and Bryan were cut from the same cloth. They wrestled in front of nobody, and then there's this guy who goes and disappears for 3 months. He's on TV shows, and that gets him a title shot. The GM felt that this had to happen because they needed to keep the momentum going. He also told him, hey, you shouldn't be worried, you beat John Cena 3 times. And he left him to be. Styles called Cena the luckiest guy in the world because he got a title shot from his brother-in-law. That said, he agrees. They have to do what's best for SmackDown and AJ Styles. He wanted to return the favor, telling Cena that if he doesn't get a win, he doesn't belong in WWE. Then Cena said that he respects him and AJ shuts him down. He's like, don't do that. And similar to Rock, who Cena called a phony, AJ decided to reciprocate that same sentiment towards him. AJ made sure to specifically call him a has-been and even said that in Hollywood, he'll never be as good as The Rock. In ring, he'll never be as good as AJ Styles. And with zero doubt in his mind, he signed the contract. All's good, but John Cena has even spoken. He said AJ's made the biggest mistake of his life, pissing him off, and yes, he needs a win to prove that he still hasn't left. And he said that he's lost all respect for AJ and called him a punk little bitch. Cena went into detail about passion. Every night AJ Styles walks down the ramp because he has to. He walks down because he wants to. That's the difference between them. They're not the same. Always talking about Hollywood. Anyone in this place would have already left, but he's still here. This guy, at his peak, was diabolical. He gives the heel hope, the fans of that person hope, then pulls their pants down. That's how John Cena was. Cena knew that AJ was going to bring his A game, but even then, he's still going to kick his ass and take his title. Why? Because he's John Cena. Baron Corbin came out and ruined everything, though, but it was an excellent promo. AJ Styles was a standout. He managed to turn things around and portray John Cena as a selfish villain who walked down on the fans despite endlessly holding Rock accountable for his departure. In addition, also used Cena's status in connection with Daniel Bryan as the reason for his title shot, showing that it's not based on the merit of form or wins, rather the status of said individual. John Cena, on the other hand, emphatically shut down all of these accusations the way he could, and also flipped things over, accusing AJ of being here for the money instead of personal interest, like himself, who he admits has been busy. To him, the match wasn't entirely about the championship. Sure it was, but Cena craved the situation. A situation where he'd fight AJ Styles at his best for the title. He won 15 times, and if he won, his legend status is elevated to the greatest heights that only one man, the man, reached. Doing so would show that he still had it in him. The only answer that he would accept from the situation. Great segment. They did interact with each other the following week with Cena dropping Styles with the AA, but their next segment was even crazier. As good as their segment together was 2 weeks earlier, this is the one people think about. AJ started off the promo complaining about being overshadowed in the Royal Rumble poster despite being champion. Then he proceeded to call out John Cena, refusing to waste time. The crowd was insanely divided. Let's go Cena, Cena sucks. And just as he's about to talk, Styles shuts him up, saying he had enough. What irritated Styles was the confidence and arrogance from Cena, who refused to acknowledge this guy. He's obviously referring to AJ Styles. He just called him a guy from Atlanta. Styles was fuming over this and even said that nobody missed Cena. Why? Because he replaced him, and that gets him surely. He's not the guy anymore. Styles started talking about excuses before calling Cena the final excuse. Why? Because he's a sorry excuse of a wrestler. And again, Styles' frustration came out to not being respected enough. He ain't settling for an inch at the Royal Rumble, he's settling for a foot in his ass. Okay? And Cena finally responds. He belittled AJ's complaints and compared them to his problems, which he ignores, and talked about how if AJ fails, he's gonna blame it on Cena for burying him. Talking about respect, he's like, oh, you've been hot for 6 months, well, I locked this place down for a decade. Oh, I didn't wrestle on the indies. Well, I was built for WWE and the big moments like right now. Regardless of how good AJ thinks he is, he's not on this level, not even on the level below him. He's like, oh, I get done in a day what you can't in a career. You're upset about a poster, Photoshop yourself. I care about Sunday, and about the guy from Atlanta, you're not that guy. You're not that, you're just just a guy that holds this championship because I let you. He went on to call AJ Styles an unoriginal person, a guy that hates everything about him, yet tries to emulate him, and he mentions the face that runs the place nickname, which was Cena's. Cena follows up saying, quote, "There's only one John Cena and I'm still a bad man and my time is now. Recognize." Now this was heat. I remember it hit even harder in 2017. So I finished the promo and forgot what Styles said because of how dominant and unforgiving Cena was here. He of course could look good because he's John Cena and he has that freedom. In Styles' case, being unacknowledged hurt him because he put in a lot of work to get to this point and excel. His performances still aren't enough to warrant being called his name or feature on the front of the poster, and AJ in particular had a strong performance last time around. I assume he didn't have the freedom to do it here because he's a heel, so he obviously can't look better than the babyface, but Cena cut through him like a hot knife in butter. It was rough. Cena when let loose is like a rabid dog. The man won't let go until he gets the bite. There was an incredible atmosphere in the Alamo Dome. These guys had everything set up for something that could potentially be legendary. Early on, AJ's intensity overpowered Cena. His advantage was that he was wrestling often, and Cena had some shots in, but this was all AJ Styles. John Cena, though, was John Cena, and in the most John Cena moment you'll ever see, this man rebounded with an AA. It wasn't enough to win it, but he was in a position to build momentum, which he failed to follow through with because AJ hit the phenomenal forearm. From here, the match kicked into high gear. Calf Crusher, STF, even AJ Styles locked in the STF, and they tried to build some doubt Styles hitting the Styles Clash, and it was possible because Cena wasn't the same man, but he kicked out. John Cena pulled out a code red like he was used to doing it, and the man even hit the Avalanche AA, and everyone thought it was over. AJ Styles, though, was like, no, it's not. He said it's not over. At this point, it felt like any finisher was the last one, but Cena grabbed him, hit an AA, and another one to go for the cover. 1, 2, 3, new champion. 16-time champion John Cena. I can't overstate how incredible this match was. I remember back in 2017 feeling like I was watching wrestling history, and since then, only few matches can actually say they were better than this in WWE. I don't even know if there's actually a match that could say it was better than this. It had the atmosphere, the story, and of course the action followed up. These two perfected their matches a long time ago and shared a connection that few could in the squared circle. It's insane to me because we always thought Edge, to a lesser extent Randy Orton and CM Punk were Cena's best opponents, but after this, AJ Styles was another inclusion. For me, it just has to be a 5-star match, and that ain't a throwaway rating for the sake of it. These guys performed at the highest level without a single moment outside the ring. What impresses me most is that this match came almost 1 year to the day that AJ Styles debuted in WWE. His run was magical, and I don't think we'll see something like it in the future. To excel at the highest level with the boss downing you and not only winning him over, but becoming one of the most trusted wrestlers he could go to, it's incredible. AJ's success in the past year proved that he was still world class and was operating at a level few wish they could achieve. I haven't felt this way about a debuting wrestler since then. AJ's on another level due to the consistency, the way he was booked, the matches themselves were at the very highest level, and we were witnessing history and we knew it at the time. It's not like we're looking back in hindsight. Like, I'm looking at my old posts from 2016 and I was raving about AJ Styles. What a way to complete his first year, what a way to end his title reign, giving it back to the face that runs the place in my match of the year for WWE. It can't get any better unless the match actually happened at WrestleMania. And there was a lot of rumors at the time of Styles facing Undertaker at WrestleMania, but they decided to end it here. Alright, that's AJ Styles' title reign. Incredible. This guy had a comedy storyline. He had an intense feud with Dean Ambrose at the same time. He was pissing off John Cena. Everything was going well. Like, at this point, anything AJ Styles touched was gonna succeed, and that's what happened here. Everything about this run was amazing. This guy could have held it for a year and nobody would have had a problem. You know what I mean? Like, this AJ Styles in 2016 was insane. I'm not over-exaggerating. I'm not overrating him the slightest. If you watched at the time and you appreciated him, you know what I'm talking about. His promos were at his very best. He was talking like he never talked before, was wrestling insane for a wrestler in WWE with the springboard 450 splashes, all of that. His moveset was insane. The way he constructed the matches, his charisma, everything about him was on point. And as I said, it was a nice way to wrap up his first year in WWE. It was incredible. My favorite promo of his was this promo with John Cena and the contract signing from 3 weeks earlier. He had some great promos before the title reign, of course, with the headband on his head, but we're talking about the title reign here. The best match was Royal Rumble 2017. It just has to be. I enjoyed that match. I'm sure a bunch of you enjoyed it as well, and I have it as my match of the year for WWE in 2017 because of how good it was. So yeah. The champ came out later that week on Smackdown. He apologized to AJ Styles for calling him a guy from Atlanta and said that he's an elite wrestler who pushed him to bring out the very best. He said that there's no time for celebration and he was ready to defend the title at Elimination Chamber. All of a sudden, Bray Wyatt interrupted. The Royal Rumble winner Randy Orton was by his side. The Eater of Worlds said that the more things change, the more things stay the same. This related to John Cena winning the title. But he had no problem with this. Why? Because Cena is going to be trapped inside the chamber with him, and then it will be the era of Wyatt. Bray said that if Cena didn't believe him, then he could ask Randy Orton. The Viper said that if Cena manages to go through the chamber, he'll be waiting for him at WrestleMania. One way or another, they're going to end this cycle. The Wyatts are going to set that title free, and they tried going after him. This led to Luke Harper making the save and Shane McMahon booking an impromptu tag team match. Harper at this point was a wild card. He was out of the Wyatt family and was getting in their heads. Cena's not booked strong here as he lost his first match as champion with Orton dropping him with an RKO. So at this point, it was a matter of situations. Orton just won the Rumble, Cena just became champion. Something had to give if they were going to book this match. In other places, the Smackdown stars were making their presence felt ahead of Elimination Chamber. Cena, the lead up to the Elimination Chamber, went one-on-one with the Viper the following week on Smackdown. Orton's mission was to roughen up Cena ahead of the chamber for Bray Wyatt. This was a good match. I think it helped that they brought this feud and used the main event formula of this time period. The finishers, the drama, near falls, all that. Cena made Orton tap out, but the ref was down. Wyatt ran in, they jumped him, and Harper made the save. And Harper's help was enough for Cena to score the victory. Good match. It really was. And I believe it was the last time John Cena and Randy Orton faced off. If you would have told me at that time, I would have believed you. Just thinking about it now, it's kind of strange actually. With regards to Elimination Chamber, this match was wonderful. It was amazing. Styles and Cena had a nice battle in the beginning. Ambrose comes in and causes chaos, but the real star was AJ Styles. This man took over the match and had an impressive performance. Cena though, not so much. It was a bit shocking how it happened though. The Miz entered the match with all this fire putting in the work, but then Cena just grabbed him, hit the AA, and eliminated him like he was a jobber. As expected, the most interesting part of this match was Cena and Styles. I think if they had 3 more matches, nobody would have had a problem. There's something entirely different to AJ Styles when compared to Edge, Orton, and Punk. He pushed this extra motivation out of him. With AJ Styles, it was like another level that we didn't really see before out of John Cena. It's very strange to think about, but like John Cena was even better with AJ Styles. I think it was something special. And in the end, it wasn't Styles that got the nod over Cena. It was Bray Wyatt. He dropped him with the Sister Abigail. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Cena was eliminated, and this meant Styles and Wyatt were fighting for the right to become WWE champion. Great battle between them. Styles was very ambitious, and that's what cost him, as Bray Wyatt caught AJ Styles and his Sister Abigail. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Wow. I remember this moment very well. Very tremendous stuff to see Bray Wyatt actually win a title, a world title in WWE. It was very strange to actually see it happen. I remember that day very well. I loved AJ Styles. I'm going to say it right now. I loved AJ Styles. Hell, if you would have asked me who should have won this, I would have chosen AJ Styles because this guy was on a whole other level in 2017. He was operating like nobody, but I was proud to see Bray Wyatt win. I was very proud and happy to see him win because this guy had gone through some pushes that didn't work out because of booking. The stories themselves were sometimes strange, but it was all worth it for this moment. Like, this guy eliminated John Cena and AJ Styles, 2 of WWE's most decorated wrestlers up to this point, to win that title. It can't really get any better than that unless he beat them at WrestleMania or something. It was really an amazing moment. I was very proud of Bray Wyatt. The fans were certainly proud of him. They were applauding, they were excited, they were happy to see him become the champion, but there was an ominous Viper looming over his head. Alright, that's John Cena's final title reign. It remains to be seen if he becomes the 17th champion, but with regards to title reign number 16, very bad. When I mean bad, I don't mean F this title reign. No. What I mean by that is, for a 16th title reign that was hyped up for 2.5 years, it was bad. It was always meant to be a transitional reign because of the fact that Orton won the Royal Rumble and they were planning the Bray Wyatt feud and all that. But with that said, I think they were expecting to do the 17th title reign in the near future, but they didn't get to it. So it is what it is. Later that week on Smackdown, Bray said he had the whole world in his hand. Now this image still looks weird because this version of Wyatt never really came close to the title. He just won it from out of nowhere. Bray was very excited and happy with his future, calling it the era of Wyatt. And the way the fans reacted, you'd think he was a face. John Cena though interrupted. He treated Wyatt like a huge threat and went back into serious business, saying no one deserves anything. They earn it. He said this because the fans were chanting that Bray deserved it. Cena called him a target and said they should get to business for the title. AJ Styles wasn't too happy about this because he was overlooked. Styles had yet to receive a one-on-one title shot and trashed Cena for thinking he could do whatever he wants. And unfortunately for Styles, he knew that Cena could, but the Phenomenal One tried his best to lay his claim for the title shot. So Daniel Bryan made it a triple threat main event. Now this was a great match. They made it seem like the deck was stacked against Bray with Harper attacking him right before the match. This allowed for Cena and Styles to battle. Now you guys know, anytime these two face off, it's magic and something special. I always show for their matches shamelessly because they were that good. This was a pay-per-view level triple threat match. These men all went insane, especially AJ Styles, but then again, the year is 2017. 2017, so I don't even need to say it. You guys know what's up with AJ Styles that year. Wyatt felt legitimized beating these two here as he went through Cena and Styles with a convincing victory. But Randy Orton was lurking. At this point, it wasn't known if Orton was going to challenge Wyatt or the Universal Champion. Randy Orton did make it seem like he wanted Bray, but then he straight up said that he refused to face him, and to understand Orton's loyalty to Wyatt, he kneeled down and gave himself to Wyatt. This also meant he surrendered his title shot, and this was enough to give him the keys to the kingdom. Bray Wyatt felt that he had a very trustworthy ally in Randy Orton, someone who showed unwavering support like nobody else, not to mention was the most powerful ally and partner that Bray Wyatt could have. Well, Orton was willing to be behind him as a number 2. Since Orton surrendered his title shot, a battle royal was made. Harper and Styles made it to the very end, but it was a draw, so this whole thing had to be dragged another week. It really looked like Harper was going to be added to the title match. There was a lot of teases and moments where it looked like, oh, maybe he's going to be in the title match. Impressive showing from both men here, but it ended with Styles winning. It quickly went awry for both Styles and Wyatt though. In a moment's notice, AJ Styles was ready to confront the champion. Bray promised to bring the spear of the devil against Styles. Then Orton popped up on the screen. He was at the Wyatt compound, which again, Bray Wyatt gave him the keys to the kingdom. Although I wouldn't call it a kingdom, looks like a freaking trash house. Orton said that it wasn't his world, and immediately Bray's look of pride and happiness for Orton faded, because this world was never his. Orton revealed his master plan to take advantage from within. Wyatt looked worried over what was about to happen, as Orton was intending to burn the spear of Sister Abigail and in turn kill the spear of Wyatt. Orton burned down the house, all while Wyatt in tears was begging him not to. Great moment here, a moment that befits a WrestleMania feud. I like the long-term story involving Orton breaking down the family from within. It was much deeper than most of the stories that WWE had at the time, but it did feel weird in a way because Orton didn't feel so much of a face with the way he acted. The fans weren't even treating Wyatt like he was a heel at all. Orton was in many ways a villain because he was using deceitful tactics, and also the dynamics would have been better if it was swapped. And again, I'm just saying the dynamics would have been better if they were doing this exact same build, because if Bray tried to provoke Orton, beat him up and stuff, and then Orton destroys him as a face, then yeah, this build makes sense. But they did it in a way where Orton seemed more of a villain. Orton as a champion and Wyatt as the Royal Rumble winner makes sense, but it is what it is. Styles and Orton had a very good match for the title shot the following week. They saw the Viper reclaim his opportunity, and it was official. Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. I didn't see this coming. Not the match, but the fact that it was a title match. Because if you asked me 2 months earlier, I would have said it was AJ Styles versus The Undertaker, John Cena versus The Undertaker. Hell, I'd say AJ Styles versus John Cena again. I don't know. Orton elaborated more on his issues with Wyatt the following week on Smackdown. He said he was waiting for his opportunity for months. Attacking him didn't make sense because it wasn't going to affect him, so he tried to figure out where to hit him where it hurts. Joining the Wyatt family was the move. The venom in his veins got deeper. It was ironic to Orton that Wyatt called himself the face of fear when he was the one showing fear. There was still one more thing to do though. Take the WWE Championship. Orton said that Bray has nothing now. The champion claimed that Orton didn't kill the spear of Sister Abigail because she was forged in fire. The effect is that he knows no boundaries. Now, he is limitless as she lives in him now. It's like, you didn't make me weaker, you made me stronger. Was it true? No, it certainly wasn't, as evident by the next couple of weeks of the build. Randy Orton didn't know how to answer all of this because Wyatt doused himself in the ashes of Sister Abigail. Bray started using different mind games to get into Orton's head. He told Orton that his one flaw will become his biggest strength. Before WrestleMania, Bray had to deal with his old brother, Luke Harper. It was a tough challenge, but the champion stood tall. Randy Orton made one last attempt to overcome Wyatt's mind games after his match, and I don't know how to explain this, but to put it simply from my perspective, Orton was trying to drive home the fact that he killed what was left of Sister Abigail. Even if Bray claims her spirit lives in him, it doesn't change the fact that Orton turned her spirit into char. So this is a story. Randy Orton's intelligence and cunningness has been on display for years. As strange as it was for him to take a backseat to Bray Wyatt, it came with ulterior motives. Wyatt's greatest strength was his reliance on his family. A strong family has brought him plenty of success in the past, and most importantly, an unshakable core. He channels his strength from the family, and that's where his strength has come from. Orton lost the battle but was aiming to win the war, a war that would challenge Wyatt's own spirit. How can he answer to a man that destroyed his family from within and killed what was left of Sister Abigail? An important source of inspiration for Bray Wyatt. No matter how hard he tries to convince the public, Wyatt was not the one with an advantage heading into WrestleMania. Randy Orton used these tactics many times in his career and always prioritized having a mental advantage because that's half of the battle. He broke his mind, spirit, and soul. Now this was a very long show. I watched it the day afterwards because that's how I usually used to do things back then. I remember WrestleMania 33 very well. I was pretty tired of watching it by the time this match happened, and I didn't have hopes for this despite the fact that I loved the story. So I skipped it. I made a great decision that day because I was watching the show since 11 a.m. and the last thing I wanted was to finish the show at 5 p.m. But this is my first time watching it and I have to talk about it here. I want to see how the story unfolded, but apparently not many people like that. I heard about bugs, I heard about nonsense, blah blah blah, but this is my first time actually watching the match. Orton was very intense early on, and is that the bugs and worms people were talking about? Randy Orton won, I'm sorry. Hope you enjoyed this video, peace, I'm out. Now, Wyatt used a lot of tactics to get into Orton's head. He had an advantage when it came to that because while Orton did dominate in the build, he's a pure pro wrestler when the bell rings. So this is where Wyatt had a bit of an advantage. Orton doesn't use too many mind games when it comes to the matches. The champion slowed down the tempo, which is funny because it's usually Orton who does, and from out of nowhere, Orton RKO'd Bray on the outside. Back in the ring, Orton was trying his best to wrap it up but found himself in Sister Abigail position. That wasn't enough for the win though, and there's the Bucks. I despise this because I don't even hate the match yet. They're really trying hard for me to hate on this match. Orton hit an RKO from out of nowhere and that was it. What the hell? That match ended prematurely. I really thought Bray would kick out there. Very mid-match that doesn't make good on the feud, but to be honest, as a match from bell to bell, I was expecting something truly awful and disappointing. It was disappointing, but it wasn't the level of disappointing that I heard it was. Then you add the story and understand more. You know, without the story, it's like, this is not good. Then you add the story, it's like, what the hell? This is horrible. My problem with it is the weird ass bugs and worms. And of course, the issue with the match not following up on the feud. It needed to feel grander. You know, it's like, oh, this match is happening on freaking Smackdown. But this is what happens when you have a play card. I don't think they would have tore the house down, but it needed more aggression. I wouldn't have known they had such an intense feud if I came into it at WrestleMania 33. And also, who administrated the Bucks to blind our eyes? Was it Bray Wyatt? Not a good choice. Orton came out later that week as the new WWE champion. The Viper's whole demeanor changed completely and he said that he had power over Wyatt and that he's his master. This was the post-WrestleMania crowd, so they kinda booed him. You guys know how they were, especially in this era. Bray said that Orton doesn't have power over him and that this is far from over. He was ready for his rematch, but before that could go down, Bray wanted to face Orton in a different match. A House of Horrors match. This was unknown, but Orton accepted. Bray tried to take advantage, and when it didn't work, Rowan made his return. Harper made the save, and despite its issues with Orton, worked side by side with them. This led to a tag team match. The Faces scored the victory with Bray watching on enviously. This feud was starting to fall off as Bray Wyatt moved to Raw as a part of the Superstar shakeup. Bray was still on Orton though. He still wanted to beat him. He said that their paths are gonna cross. Rowan took advantage of this and laid him out on behalf of Wyatt. Now the problem with this feud is the fact that Orton was sidetracked with Jinder Mahal. He dealt with Rowan in an ODQ match, but the modern day Maharaja wanted him to know that he's got his eyes on the title. Orton said that while Bray called the match Orton's Purgatory, it will be Wyatt's Eternal Hell. A very one-sided build. Wyatt was talking on Raw with no real pushback or responses from Orton, and it was a far cry from what their feud was earlier. House of Horrors saw Wyatt try his best with the mind games. Orton walked into many different rooms with different kinds of horrors. This house did a number on Orton. He took a rough beating and it didn't bode well for his chances in the arena. Bray was convinced that he had the match, but Orton used one of his tactics against him. Jinder Mahal though interfered and cost Orton the match. There it is, Bray Wyatt won. And by the way, it was a non-title match because they changed it. It was initially supposed to be for the WWE Championship, but they didn't bother. I liked the concept and actually enjoyed Wyatt's feud with Matt Hardy, but this match felt rushed. I would also say that it was the first time, so there's that, but judging by the way things were at the time, it felt like it was rushed and as a way to get it over with, as evident by the Jinder Mahal feud. Like, they were salivating to give Jinder the belt at this point. But that's the feud. Bray Wyatt ended it on top, although it wasn't really that emphatic, because Orton had to transition into a feud with Jinder Mahal, but he won the feud. Personally, I like this long-term storytelling here. WWE really knew what they were doing with having Orton infiltrate the Wyatt family. It's just, if Orton was gonna end the whole story as a face, I think they should have tried to make Wyatt seem more evil than he was in the past, because it felt like Orton was the one who was more evil. That's the only problem I have with this feud. Obviously, Wyatt won the belt and became a transitional champion to give it back to Orton, but this could have been their chance to establish Bray as a much bigger talent than he was in the past. It is unfortunate for him because at the end of the day, this feud, it didn't fulfill its full potential, I'd say. Up to this whole burning down the Wyatt family compound thing, it was excellent, but like, there's some things out there that kind of drag it a bit down, but it was still a good feud, so there's that. WWE has a global stranglehold on the wrestling industry. Nobody will come close to the level of reach that WWE has, but even then, there's still a strong interest to strengthen that global reach. Plans are in motion for WWE to expand in India. They had shows there every once in a while, and even though wrestling is possibly popular there, it wasn't at the level that it could be. I don't know how things are in India, but by the looks of it, they really like wrestling. 2017 was intended to be a major year for WWE's international affairs. A big focus was on India. WWE Shop was launched in the country in March of 2017, the WWE Network as well, and with all these developments, WWE decided to push an Indian wrestler, Jinder Mahal. Jinder Mahal had only returned to WWE after a 2-year stint on the Indies in August of 2016. Mahal's time on Raw showed no sign of a potential push. Smackdown after WrestleMania 33, though, change things. On the April 18th, 2017 episode of Smackdown, Shane McMahon booked a six-pack challenge with the winner getting a title shot against Randy Orton for the WWE Championship. A very high-energy match with very few contenders. If you look at it for that time period's perspective, there was only two real challengers, Luke Harper and Sami Zayn, but it was neither. Hell, it wasn't even Dolph Ziggler. It was Jinder Mahal. The Singh brothers made their debut and helped him score the victory. One of the biggest surprises of 2017, this guy was a 74 overall wrestler. It was very reminiscent of JBL. The fans booed, and he claimed it was because of his background, his wealth, the fact that he could speak two languages. And the Americans don't accept diversity, but they'll be forced to accept him as the WWE champion. This was crazy. Not the fact that he won the title, but the fact that he became the #1 contender, because it just came from out of nowhere, and those more likely challengers, such as Luke Harper and Sami Zayn. Like, it just wouldn't be expected of Jinder Mahal to win the title, or even challenge for the title, let alone. Randy Orton interrupted. He congratulated Jinder, but told him that his prize won't be this title. The prize was an RKO from the champion. He wanted to focus on Jinder, but his real problem was with Bray Wyatt at the moment. That's a story for another day, but with regards to Jinder, it was shocking. It was so strange how he was a big challenger. Orton wasn't able to deviate away from Mahal because he refused to let him give others attention. He called himself the House of Horror and promised to take the title. He's got more wealth, class, and culture than the fans. Jinder had a very strong disdain for Orton and the fans. They look at him as if he's beneath them. He gave his fans a message and attacked. The Bollywood boys once again made the save and overpowered the WWE champion. He even took the title afterwards. It was practically set in stone at this point. The plans were in motion for Jinder Mahal to win the title. This man was posing with the belt like it was his prized possession, and Shane ended up taking it away from him, and in the build to Backlash, Jinder continued to maintain his momentum. He cost Orton his match with Bray Wyatt at Payback, and the champion was hell-bent on returning the favor. WWE made tremendous strides in giving Mahal a certain aura, and all it takes is a suit and some goons. Of course, he needed the look, because without that, this stuff falls on its head. This man's storyline was so confident he was winning that he already posed with the belt. This is a new one I heard of, somebody posing with a title. He was confidently telling everyone that he will bring this title back to his people, and they'll erect a statue in respect to him. The new face of America interrupted, and this led to a 6-man tag team match. Jinder Mahal once again made good on his intentions and beat Randy Orton. From Orton's perspective, it doesn't come down to racism from the fans. That's not the case. It's because he's an ass. Jinder for the final time told Orton what's to come before Samir and Sanil ran in and attacked. This was a setup which once again allowed for Jinder Mahal to drop the Viper with the Kalas, or as it's actually called, the Khalas. This was a very one-sided build, with WWE doing everything they can to treat Jinder Mahal like a huge threat. Orton never had a strong moment in this build, not even one. As an overall wrestler though, this was a very strange choice to give this push to Jinder Mahal, because he was a serviceable wrestler. That said, he could talk a bit, had the look, and could carry himself well, and most importantly, he had the India element by his side, because without that, most likely than not, he probably wouldn't have gotten this push. And those things will take you very far, especially in 2017. And with the suit, the backup guys, it kind of legitimizes him in a way. And I remember Backlash 2017, heading into it, you believed he would win it, but at the same time, it was unbelievable. So with that said, Orton quickly went on the attack right before the match began. Jinder was overwhelmed with this high-octane main event pace that was entirely foreign to him. By the time Jinder was physically prepared, Orton had done a considerable amount of damage physically and most importantly, mentally. He resorted to slowing down the pace and suffocating Orton on the defense. Quick stomps, rest holds, and a strong focus on the arm. In doing so, Jinder neutered most of Randy Orton's offense, which involved the use of space for the Viper to navigate. And the very moment he deviated away from that, Orton took advantage. Jinder here reminds me of those underdog teams that stand no chance but manage to make it far in the game, and with that mistake, it's slowly falling apart for them. As evident by this, he was more and more desperate to neutralize Orton that he didn't realize he was swimming in uncharted waters with a long-time main eventer. Mahal did have a moment, but other than that, it was all Orton. The Singh brothers got involved in this distraction, opened way for Jinder to do nothing and receive an RKO. The Bollywood boys once again got involved, and Orton sent them back to 2016, and this was an iconic moment. It's more iconic than it's expected to be because of how Orton just flips him backwards. He just rolls in the air. It was crazy. Orton drops him with the DDT, and Jinder capitalizes with the Kalas 1, 2, 3. Stunning. This to me is probably the most shocking thing that happened in the last 6 years. It's somewhat expected, but the moment it happened, once the bell rang and the ref counted to 3, that contradicted everything. Buddy Rogers, Billy Graham, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Bret Hart, Stone Cold, The Undertaker, The Rock, John Cena, and Jinder Mahal's on that list of names that won the WWE Championship. Not to mention, Jinder Mahal was the 50th WWE Champion as well. What the hell? Nah, I remember that day very well. I was stunned. It's the most unimaginable world title victory in recent years. Sheamus in 2009 and Jinder Mahal in 2017. This also leads to another question. If WWE could push somebody this hard with zero reaction only 2 months ago with that talent, what could they do with someone relatively popular? Because to me, this proves that they have the capabilities to push almost anybody as long as they have competent skills. With that said, there will never be a world title victory as shocking as Jinder's. Yes, it was kind of expected, but would you have bet on it? Gun to the back of your head, would you back them to actually have Jinder win? He was never a mid-carder beforehand, let alone an IC champion, so how the hell would you actually expect them to book him, of all people, to win the title? It was crazy. The match itself was a bit better than I remember it being. I actually enjoyed it here. Why? They seemed to mask a bit of Mahal's weaknesses with the interferences, and I really liked the pace. It didn't overstay its welcome and was a bit different from the usual WWE main event with the kickouts and all that stuff. Although watching this title reign, I began to miss some of that. Jinder Mahal was now the WWE champion, and the presentation only improved with the belt. He had a Punjabi celebration later that week on Smackdown. The thing about Jinder Mahal is, without a single thought, you're like, yeah, he is the world champion. If you knew nothing about wrestling, you'd be thinking to yourself, Jinder Mahal is the world champion. He looks like one. Now, doing something foreign like this is easily a way to get booed by the crowd. That's what they did here. The champion complained about how the people boomed for being exposed as fools for not believing he could win the title. Orton's on the decline while Jinder, is the greatest WWE champion of all time. It was a celebration from Punjab for India, and once again, he wanted to speak in Punjabi. Remember JBL's Pyro in 2007? They kinda did it here again. Jinder Mahal was their guy, and they were going above and beyond to push him as the next big thing. Randy Orton, on the other hand, finally returned the following week. It was confirmed he was getting his title shot at Money in the Bank. He said that his grandfather would slap him for losing to some jobber like Jinder Mahal. He didn't say the jobber part. And this is where the problems with this title reign occur. Orton made mention of doing things the American way. I'll dive into that later. Orton thought Jinder didn't earn anybody's respect. All he earned was an ass kicking. Money in the Bank is in St. Louis. He can't show his face if he loses. Orton didn't want to talk. He wanted to prove it. Jinder interrupted, and again he called him an ignorant American who tells stories about a bygone era, talking about how he should behold him or something like that. We're not gonna length pad this video. He ended up ending the promo there, left. With that said, Jinder Mahal's biggest problem in this title reign was the nationalism. We'll talk about it later. Jinder continued promising to dismantle Orton's dreams of winning the title in his hometown and placed a huge emphasis on USA. At the final Smackdown before Money in the Bank, Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton had one final confrontation. Same promo from Jinder. USA chants though intensify. Orton interrupted from out of nowhere and dropped him with an RKO, and this was probably the first time Orton had won over Mahal in the build. The Viper wasn't interested in talking. His actions speak for themselves. The build to the match was very simple again, except this time around, Jinder was starting to become more aggressive against the American fans. It was an us, USA versus them, foreigner thing. Orton had a tremendous reception from the crowd, and this match was very similar to Backlash. Orton overwhelmed Jinder with a fast-paced action which he wasn't accustomed to. Heel distraction, and Jinder takes advantage. This time around, he targeted the leg. Pace was slowing down, and me talking about it, it'd have you believing I was talking about Backlash. The only thing different was the leg. He locked in the figure four, provoking Ric Flair on the outside, and attempted a superplex, provoking Orton's father, Bob Orton. But he failed and opened the way for the challenger, who made no mistake in pushing up the tempo. RKO, but the Singh brothers put Jinder's foot on the rope. They rejected and decided to provoke Orton's father. This only caused him to go off the deep end and obliterate them. These poor guys are always getting destroyed with these spots. Once Orton gets back in, Jinder takes advantage with the Kalas and retains the title. I didn't like this one. It was too similar to their Backlash match, and Jinder's work was uninspiring, not to mention the layout was the same. That said, they did a decent job of masking his shortcomings. Orton sold the pain well, and this match, if placed 10 years ago, would have been even better. It's just personally, I didn't like that match. Another reason is the previous title matches before this title reign. AJ Styles and John Cena, and all those matches didn't need a lot of smoke and mirrors to them. That's my problem with this match, you know, like Jinder, he needed a lot going up with him in order for his matches to work. Randy Orton was only getting more and more frustrated with how things were going. He was upset with beating himself and alluded to this being Jinder's strategy. The Viper was more and more aggressive and even willing to get personal. Orton dished out a brutal assault that humbled Mahal, and at this point it was still not confirmed that he had a rematch. So he was out to torture the champion and make his life a living hell, all to get the rematch. Shane McMahon had to interrupt and calm things down. That didn't work initially. Orton was driven by pure emotion. Shane gave him his rematch, but that wasn't it. Jinder Mahal gets to choose the stipulation. The champion came out and said this was an example of what's wrong with Randy Orton and the fans, and he revealed that the match was going to be a Punjabi Prison match. Mahal continued to further push the idea that he was hated based on racism, and he thought he had the advantage in the Punjabi Prison, but Orton assured him that wasn't the case. It's further from the truth. He said that nobody likes Jinder, not for what he comes from, but because he's a jackass. Okay. On the final SmackDown before Battleground, the Punjabi Prison was brought up. Oh, I'm gonna punish Randy Orton, modern day Maharaja. Orton thought he was either the bravest or the stupidest. He couldn't understand Jinder wanting to be caged up with him of all people. He's isolated away from his advantage of having the Singh brothers. For Orton, there's nothing left to lose. The same can be said for Jinder Mahal. 1.3 billion people on his shoulders. He didn't even bother fighting, preferring to save it until Sunday. Yeah, they had this thing about Jinder Mahal where they were promoting him as the leader of India, basically. I don't know why. Well, actually, I know why, obviously, but I personally prefer if they went in a different direction. That said, his promos are a bit of the same here. They're a bit repetitive. That's why I made it short, like, oh, I'm gonna punish Randy Orton, Mania, Maharaja, all that stuff. Because that's what he was saying for 10 minutes. It was the same stuff. A big part of this feud was USA versus India, basically, which was already a feud below with Cena and Rusev, USA versus Bulgaria. I personally don't like how Jinder had to be an evil foreigner. It's a cliche, generic story that limited him in some ways. This build, in my opinion, lacked fire as well. It was pretty soft for what the feud was. Orton attacks once, but after that, it's just Jinder being angry and proclaiming himself to be the victor. With that said, this match is very infamous. Now, a Punjabi Prison match is extremely hard to execute. Great concept, very interesting, but there's a reason the match doesn't happen often. With Orton and Mahal, it had some nice spots, but after the first few moments, it got dull. It drags for a bit before they climb over the first cage. Again, it got old quickly. Orton's spots to the Bollywood boys were amazing. Those guys always went above and beyond to destroy themselves, and it seemed all but over for Orton to reclaim the gold, when all of a sudden, the Great Khali returned. Great Khali was the one who invented this match, and this guy came out 94 overall like it was 2006 and cost Orton the title. Hell, he even held it for a moment. The match to me was never going to be as good as it's imagined. You know, that's the biggest problem with the Punjabi Prison. It's expected to be this huge grand match, but it's never going to be that because it's a bit hard to execute. In this version's case, they tried. You know, you could clearly see that they tried, but Mahal was a bit limited, and number two, the concept in itself was limited. Later that week on SmackDown, Jinder Mahal was looking forward to SummerSlam. He claimed Orton underestimated him and was ready to stay champion for as long as he likes. All of a sudden, John Cena interrupted. The champion tried to predict what Cena would say, but it was none of that. Instead, he wanted to congratulate him and tell him that at SummerSlam, he's becoming the 17-time champion. Daniel Bryan, though, told him that opportunities are earned, and a match between John Cena and Shinsuke Nakamura was made, with the winner facing Jinder Mahal at SummerSlam for the title. Now, this is a very bizarre match and an even more bizarre prize. Jinder Mahal is the champion, and John Cena and Shinsuke Nakamura are fighting to face him for the title. And for a dream match, this certainly met expectations, especially for a SmackDown match. They couldn't go all out due to the setting, but I really enjoyed watching. This was during my disappearance from wrestling arc. I knew this match happened, but didn't watch it until March of 2018. I kind of regret not seeing it then, but I certainly didn't regret the other things happening at the time. Nakamura ended up winning, and back then, beating Cena was a bigger deal. Mahal, meanwhile, was busy losing to Randy Orton. With Indian Independence Day coming up, Jinder Mahal decided to celebrate and also address Shinsuke Nakamura. He called the fans xenophobic and continued with his traditions. They were all riled up and Shinsuke Nakamura had to interrupt. He said Independence Day in India is the same day as SummerSlam, where he loses the title. Later that night, the WWE Champion was on the verge of losing the title during his match with John Cena, and the match saw Jinder take a super AA when Baron Corbin ran in and decided to cash in. He ended up losing the cash in, and this was insane at the time. This guy was getting pushed hard, and just like that, he says some stuff in the back, and they end his push. Man! That was unfortunate for Baron Corbin. Dry build again. Me personally, I would have preferred to see John Cena face him because I feel like with Shinsuke it was a bit too soon. John Cena, they could have gotten a little bit more out of it with the promos and the story in itself. They didn't do that with Shinsuke Nakamura. The match at SummerSlam belonged on SmackDown. I watched it here and man, it left a lot to be desired. For one, this was the world title match for SummerSlam and it didn't have that energy. It was boring and very generic. Jinder was doing the basic stuff. Everyone knew what he was going to do and how he was going to do it, and of course the interference. The best part of this match is realizing that this Fatal 4-Way was next. Jinder retained, which was kind of shocking. Not really, but it highlighted the huge problem with this title reign, the lack of great matches. The best match that involved him was Cena and Nakamura, and he was involved watching it from the stands, but this was the beginning of the end. At this point, a lot of fans realized, hey, this title reign isn't as good as WWE wanted it to be. It was very disappointing, it was very underwhelming, and it was clear that there was some problems with pushing a guy from the lower card straight to the main event scene with no character development, no build-up, because he won the title within a month. Daniel Bryan thought that Shinsuke Nakamura deserved another title shot and booked the Singh brothers in a match with the King of Strong Style. They got destroyed and Mahal took the Kinshasa. The champion was feeling more and more disrespected to the point where he demanded reverence. The Singh brothers felt they wronged Jinder and the great continent of Asia. They were about to kiss his feet when Shinsuke Nakamura interrupted. Saved by the bell, or saved by the song in this case. He treated the Singh brothers like they were jobbers and brawled with Jinder. They got to him and Randy Orton had to make the save. Rusev runs in and drops Orton, leading to a tag team main event. Mahal, though, in the meantime, dropped Nakamura with the Kalas. This didn't mean much by the end of the night, though, because Shinsuke Nakamura rebounded and beat Rusev to stand tall. Despite losing, Jinder wasn't the last man down, as Orton RKO'd Nakamura, signaling he wanted his title shot. Jinder Mahal claimed he was a better representative of Asia than Shinsuke Nakamura, and he had to face Orton in the #1 contenders match. He succeeded, so he went to the drawing board. He decided to make jokes about him. Man, Jinder had no joke for him to be choked up on his ass like that. Like, come on. He tried to trick the fans into laughing about Nakamura and the way he looks and acts to make them look racist. And he also tried to convince Nakamura not to become the champion of these people because deep down, they don't like him either. He took it a step further the following week. Mahal made fun of his angry face, his artistic face, and said he always looks the same. Actually, he looks the same is what he said. Nakamura chants intensify, but that wasn't it. He claimed the fans believe he gets his haircut by a dog groomer and called him Mr. Miyagi. That's too far, chant intensifies, so trying to prove the crowd is racist exposed Jinder as the true one in storyline. He tried to live through the fans and in turn, he proved who he truly was. That said, this promo caused controversy, and of course when WWE is on the news, it's not because John Cena won a match. So they were talked about for a bit, talking about how WWE was racist, something along the lines of that. And a lot of people were upset by this promo because it didn't really need to happen. Not to mention Jinder's run was not viewed in the best way, so adding this to it kind of makes things even worse. The following week, Jinder opted to compliment the artist, and there was more of those jokes. It was the same as the last 3 weeks. On the final image, it turns out Nakamura was there. He came out, took out all 3 men, and dropped Mahal with the Kinshasa. On the final Smackdown before Hell in a Cell, Shinsuke Nakamura gave his final thoughts. When asked about Jinder's remarks, Shinsuke said, "Sticks and stones." You know the rest. The Bollywood boys interrupted it and introduced the champion who attacked from behind. The 3 men overwhelmed Nakamura and Jinder hit the Kalas. A very dull build again. Jinder's stories were getting worse as time went on because at this point they ran out of stories for him and it was just generic, "You Americans, da 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 da." And it was so dry, it was so forgettable, and at this point everyone was over the title ring. And that's the thing, they did not really think about this thing beyond the evil foreigner, which shouldn't have happened in the first place. Yeah, they could have been the champion of India, this and that, but I don't think they should have gone the evil foreigner route because it was his first title reign. It's a cliche, it's an old story, it's been done before, and it's rarely been done good in the modern era. Jinder Mahal at this point was not a good champion. People didn't really like him that much. Now, this wasn't a now or never moment for Shinsuke Nakamura. Hell no, but it was a great opportunity to do something with him. Hell in a Cell is the same story though. He dominated with a slow pace, and very similar to Jinder's previous matches, he isolated the left shoulder and it took a while for the challenger to fight back. The Singh brothers were ejected again and it seemed more and more likely for Shinsuke to win. He hit the Kinshasa but the ref took too long and Mahal grabbed the bottom rope. He countered the second one and hit the Kalas to retain the title. If Shinsuke kicked out there, that would have been amazing, but they had other plans. A little better than SummerSlam, but it wasn't memorable. Now, a big expectation was for Jinder to walk in to WWE's India tour in December with the title, and that was what was expected. He visited the country at one point, posed with the belt, and it seemed like he was going to return there with the very same title. Jinder's ego continued growing as he wanted the fans to bow down before him. AJ Styles, though, had a problem with this. He mentioned how Jinder had yet to beat him, and the champion called AJ Styles delusional and got attacked. How you're worried about Brock Lesnar when AJ Styles is in front of him. That match was set for Survivor Series with John Cena potentially being the special referee for that match, but plans were scrapped. Paul Heyman, meanwhile, said Mahal is not Brock Lesnar's equal, even said he isn't worthy of being a pretender WWE champion. And these sentiments were apparently shared in real life. So AJ Styles was placed in an even more prominent position, especially after doing a Smackdown show in Chile and flying the very next day to TLC to face Finn Balor in an amazing match. He went from Chile all the way to Minneapolis, Minnesota and had an amazing match of the night probably against the Demon Finn Balor. They looked at him a bit differently. He was already respected, but this was something else. Styles beat both of the Singh brothers and earned a title shot against Jinder Mahal. He attacked after the second match and left Styles beaten and battered. The match between AJ Styles and Jinder Mahal was set for the November 7th, 2017 episode of Smackdown. Manchester, England was very unaware of what was to come. And remember, Jinder's matches weren't the best, but this is 2017 AJ Styles we're talking about. This man will give a TV remote a good match. So when you have a human that actually knows how to go between the ropes, What the hell do you expect? Like, just tell me, what do you expect with AJ Styles in 2017? He's gonna have a good match. Jinder's strategy was strength. AJ was unable to overcome this big hurdle in the beginning. Mahal was simply untouchable without separation. So AJ used that blistering pace to make space and accomplish nothing because Mahal was simply too powerful. It was a struggle to get back in the match, let alone create something. Styles had to channel that aggression to finally chop down the big guy. AJ was more grounded during this part of the match, and it was doing him wonders. He locked in the calf crusher and forced Jinder to crawl to the ropes. Lethal kicks and strikes, but all Mahal had to do was hit a clothesline. Jinder had lost the strong grip on the match and was becoming more and more prone to aerial attacks, unlike earlier. 450, the Singh brothers interfered and AJ took them out before taking the Kalas. 1, 2, no! AJ put his foot on the rope, and I believe this was the very first time that AJ Styles or anybody kicked out of the Kalas or evaded a loss after taking the Kalas. The fans were excited and hyped at this point. He bumps him off the ropes, and AJ finally hits the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3. New champion. Great match. Jinder's offense was at its best here, with Styles selling well and bumping around, making him look like a huge champion. That's the big difference here. Jinder did go to work, and obviously some of his work was the same, but with AJ Styles selling, making him look a bit more dangerous than he already was, it helped tremendously and elevated him in some ways during this match. It was great stuff, and in my opinion, the best match from this title reign. They didn't really need to use a lot of the shenanigans and the smoke and mirrors with Jinder Mahal here, because AJ Styles sold well and did his part of the match very well. You know, Jinder showed up, but AJ Styles showed up a bit more. Great stuff. Styles won the title, which meant he was going to face Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series 2017. That title reign is a story for another day, but with regards to Jinder Mahal, this was not a good run. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you or say anything. There's a reason why I didn't watch Smackdown a lot in 2017, and it was this title reign. It wasn't the main reason. Like, I'm gonna be honest here, that was not the main reason. It's because the product as a whole on Smackdown was very dull. When you look at the women's division at this time, they used to pair all 6 women in these backstage segments, and nothing was going on. It just wasn't interesting. But watching Jinder's title reign here, I learned that his presentation is even better than I remembered it being. I already remember it being good, him coming out and having this angry look on his face. He looked amazing. Matches, though, left a lot to be desired. As for his character work, they limited him. Now, obviously, WWE knew what they were going into, but they realized, hey, we should make him an evil foreigner, which I personally didn't like because it took away a little bit more and it made him a bit more generic. I personally think they should have made him the champion of India, but not an evil foreigner way, you know? Like, he kind of represents India and whatnot, but at the end of the day, he's a heel. I think they should have gone that route, but the evil foreigner thing was just bad. I didn't like it, and it was a failed experiment. WWE wanted something from Jinder Mahal, but they didn't get it because sales in India, the tour, they weren't interested. And one of the reasons they weren't interested was because Mahal was a heel. A lot of the fans there are very old school. They like baby faces like John Cena and, of course, Roman Reigns. Like, Roman Reigns is mega popular in India by the looks of it. Like, ever since I know about wrestling in India, I always hear they like Roman Reigns there. Every time you hear about wrestling in India, they loved Roman Reigns in 2017 a lot. I remember back then, they were dying for Roman Reigns. So why would they care about a heel even though he's from the same country? Because at the end of the day, he's a heel. They're not going to like him. I will say it's nice that WWE tried something new. That's something positive. They tried something new here, but it wasn't what they expected it to be. When they did the India tour later on, he lost to Triple H. He lost to Triple H and bowed down before him. Like, he couldn't even win in his home country, even though he became the champion. It's a house show, obviously, so I'm not going to over-exaggerate things. But yeah, I think it's unfortunate, but glad to see Jinder Mahal himself earn a WWE Championship reign. It's kind of bizarre, it's kind of weird, but I'm sure the man was very, very excited about it. He had the look. They backed him a lot, but making him the generic character in the limited matches he had, it wasn't going to work. We can't forget to give credit to these two. These two did everything well. Plus, their selling was ridiculous. They made every wrestler look like $1 million, including Jinder Mahal and his opponents he faced. Everybody. So yeah. The following week, the fans were more proud of the win than Styles himself. Paul Heyman gave a strong reminder of what Brock is capable of on Raw, and Daniel Bryan, the Smackdown GM, made fun of him. He believed Styles was the man to bring him to the breaking point. The new champion wanted to use fatigue to his advantage, but also acknowledged he's the underdog. He was ready for a fight. Styles also had to worry about his next challenger, Jinder Mahal. He promised to take what's left of Styles after his match with Brock and win back the title. Okay, here we go. Two great champions, AJ Styles and Brock Lesnar. Masters of Japanese wrestling and icons of the WWE. First time ever. Brock quickly went with what he knew. AJ was so overwhelmed with a flurry of attacks from Brock, who wasn't worried about the challenge in front of him. He was determined to wrap it up early. And like Booker T said, he didn't want water or bread, he wanted meat. Pause. It was almost embarrassing at some points because he was beating an almost defenseless man. The roads in Suplex City were filled with potholes and bumps. He was treating him like a rag doll, and this fatigue came in though. This is where things were starting to change. It was starting to become a different story. Brock hit one of the best German suplexes ever here. This is one of the best German suplexes you'll ever see because of Styles' selling ability. The world-class ability of Styles forced this match to become more even. He was doing everything he could and even avoided the F5 to lock in the calf crusher. Brock was writhing in pain but then decided the party was over with a brutal slamming of Styles. He obliterated him, but even then Styles found a way to hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, no. So he tried it again, but Brock caught him and with one leg managed to hit the F5. 1, 2, 3. Incredible match. Lesnar made Styles look like a huge threat and someone to worry about. He wasn't even smiling when he won because he was in pain, and looking at the challenge he had to deal with, AJ's performance was so good, he had Paul Heyman giving a promo about how he's one of the best around. It was one of the best matches in the entire year, and something I actually regret not watching at the time because, again, I wasn't watching a lot of WWE back then, like some random shows here and there, but even then I used to skip through them. And there was just not much to think about, you know? Like, I thought Styles winning the title was cool, but like, I just didn't care much about WWE because it was dry. Styles, though, had to look forward to Jinder Mahal. The former champion destroyed him before his handicap match with the Singh brothers. They jumped him for a couple of minutes, but it did nothing because they were jobbers. They accomplished nothing as Styles won the match to enrage Jinder. The build for the match was short and they were taking it slow with this one. AJ Styles was ready for his first title defense and he said there's no reason to be champion if you're not defending it often. Styles praised Mahal for his aggression and ways to keep the title. It was more of a way for him to remind everyone what he's capable of. The Singh brothers got their asses beat the previous week and AJ wanted to hug them. He wanted to be in Styles' corner after Jinder beat them up again, and they ensured his match was going to be one-on-one and the champion was ready for a fight. And if you're like, why? Why is he ready for a fight? Because he knew Jinder was not far around. And that was true. Jinder didn't bother though. Very short build. They didn't even try to make Jinder look like a huge threat. It's like they wanted to get rid of him from the main event scene as soon as possible. It's one of the most obvious main events of the year, which is not saying much because it's a December pay-per-view. We all know those end. But let's talk about it. This one saw Jinder become more aggressive and urgent to win back the title. He worked on the ribs and was much smarter here. I like their Smackdown match more because it had a certain magic and allure when compared to this. This wasn't bad though. Styles made him tap out to retain the title with the calf crusher. So they established the calf crusher as a tough finisher again, and AJ was off to the next challenger. If you're like, why don't you have much to say about this? Because there wasn't much with the match. There just wasn't much. The better match was their Smackdown match. That's one thing for certain. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn had plenty of issues with Shane McMahon. Daniel Bryan was an ally of theirs despite the chaos they were causing, and he was somewhat favorable towards them, and that would show more so around this time period. Owens cheated to beat him in singles action. Zayn distracted him and Shane tried to make the save, but it led to the loss. This loss upset him greatly, but even then, AJ's goal is to hold the title to WrestleMania and retain the belt in the main event. Other than that, he wanted to beat Sami Zayn after last week. Yeah, he's gonna main event over Brock Lesnar. Shane apologized for his mistake last week, and this story was gonna tie into the whole KO and Shane one. Bryan was defending them harder than usual, and it led to Zayn winning the match and beating Styles. It went from bad to worse with Bryan giving them a title shot. AJ wanted a handicap match and he agreed, but made it a title match. Styles regret talking about a handicap match and mentioned the possibility of him losing the title, but he wasn't thinking much of it. The odds were with them and said that it wasn't fair. He didn't make a big deal out of it though and said that he could fight both of them separately. Renee Young was trying to get his insight into the whole Shane and Bryan drama, but he didn't bother to give an answer because that didn't concern him. Kevin Owens though saw it very differently, saying Styles knew that he wasn't capable of beating them because of the numbers. He even said they're going to be the first co-champions. Shane decided to rain on their parade and gave them a handicap match against Styles, Orton, and Nakamura. As expected, they lost. Shane was doing everything he could to make things tough for them, but even then there was plenty of confidence from KO and Sami. It was a foregone conclusion. Same can be said from Styles' perspective. He's going to do everything he could to keep the title because the possibility of them holding the title together makes him disgusted. They are annoying him with the yep thing, and I don't remember it being so over because at the time, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn thought they were like Dan and Bryan. They're going to do the yes movement thing, but they had this yep thing. I don't remember it being this popular. Like, I remember the yep thing, but I never remember it being as popular as it was here. The heels praised him and said he's predictable. They knew he was gonna come out here and act tough. He's also ignorant and stupid because he could have just shut up and the match wouldn't have happened. Then they mentioned his challenge of facing them in the same night and tried to get him to accept the challenge. A challenge that he himself made. Daniel Bryan came out and AJ questioned his decision, so instead of letting him book the match, Styles did it himself and accepted the challenge. He got through Owens easily with the calf crusher and he tapped out to prevent further damage and stayed around to get attention to his leg. Zayn had a huge advantage in attack before his match. This worked very well for him, not to mention Owens was on the outside. He wasn't doing anything but was definitely someone to look out for. Styles cost himself the match after being distracted and taking a blue thunder bomb. Yeah, Zayn used all his blue thunder bomb power on this match because he rarely wins matches with it. Like, I don't even remember, last time he won with a blue thunder bomb, if I remember correctly, was like a year and a half ago. With that said, the handicap match was good. It was weird because of the stipulation though. That prevents it from being a better match, and it could have been much more if it was a triple threat match. Styles though managed to go through them and retain the title. He barely beat them and made good use of the element of surprise. And again, I'ma say, this match had potential. I think it would have been a great triple threat match, but they decided to use this to advance the Shane McMahon story. Later that night, Shinsuke Nakamura won the Royal Rumble and didn't waste time in making his choice. It was AJ Styles. A dream match for WWE, but their paths crossed a few years back. Styles was the leader of Bullet Club and amidst an incredible run that saw him become the undisputed best wrestler in the world. Nakamura was already widely known as one of the very best wrestlers in New Japan, and on Styles' way out, put on one of his best matches in his entire career for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. 2 years later, they meet on wrestling's biggest stage, WrestleMania. Nakamura was very over at the time. He was loved by the fans, and it seemed like only a matter of time before he won a title. They had plenty of respect for each other and even teamed up later that week on Smackdown, but then Nakamura started the mind game saying he's gonna beat him at WrestleMania. At the same time, he still had to deal with either Zayn or Owens for Fastlane. They faced each other for a title shot and went all out. Sammy pressed AJ and got the match thrown out. He beat them up, and this led to Daniel Bryan coming out and booking a triple threat match for the title. The following week, Zayn and Owens attacked both Baron Corbin and Dolph Ziggler. This turned out to be a big mistake because Baron Corbin got himself a title shot by beating Kevin Owens. Dolph Ziggler followed up with a win against Sami Zayn, and it was now a fatal 5-way. AJ Styles felt that he was still in control of his destiny. He could make it to WrestleMania. Styles didn't consider it arrogance because he's always backed it up. But there was a problem. He could lose the title without actually losing the match because Dolph Ziggler could pin Kevin Owens. He could take them all. They're all beatable. Baron Corbin didn't want to hear him say he could be beaten because it was nonsense. The last time they faced off, he won the match, even beat him for the US Championship. The difference between them is that AJ is an athlete. He, Baron Corbin, he's a fighter. Kevin Owens came out and he quickly insulted them and called Corbin a scared cub after attacking him. Owens used this as an example of Shane having a vendetta against him, and he also said that he didn't need Sami Zayn and that he let him down after losing to Dolph Ziggler. Shane McMahon came out and booked the match between Corbin and Styles. Owens faced Dolph Ziggler. Sami Zayn made good on his mistake from the previous week and helped Owens score the win. As for Styles, he beat Corbin, but Owens and Zayn attacked after the match. They didn't stand tall though because Corbin dropped both of them. Just when Styles knew what he was dealing with, the champ came calling. He kicked off Smackdown the following week, and Cena was still trying to find his way to WrestleMania. He failed to win the Chamber and decided he wanted to be included in the Fastlane main event. He gets free main events, I guess. Then again, his name is John Cena. Cena was willing to earn a spot in the match. He ended up getting a match with AJ Styles. If he wins, he's in the match. Now, I completely forgot they had this one. I actually was watching WWE again around this time. I had come back for the Rumble after watching clips, and I could swear I watched this, but I don't remember it. I'm almost certain I did. Let's talk about it. Cena and Styles had a storied rivalry in 2016. Styles brought out the very best in John Cena and final form Cena in some of his best matches in his entire career. I think bell to bell, Royal Rumble 2017 might be Cena's greatest performance. The dynamics here are very different. Cena's already trying to go all out and felt like this was his last chance for WrestleMania. After the commercial break, Cena was in control. The face that runs the place brought AJ to a dangerous place. Cena's busting out a lot more here, and the style of the match was basically their matches in a short time. That's what it was. Workhorse Cena had a lot to offer. I remember it was so random seeing him do all these moves, but up to this point, it was normal business. They were going back and forth, and Cena was the one with the edge here. He was one step ahead of Styles for the most part, and I hate how there was commercials during this one, because this was a great match. Styles was making mistakes, but still managed to hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, no. It wasn't enough to keep Cena down. 450 didn't work, so this opened way for the AA. He tried to follow up, but Styles pulled the rope to the outside. He knew Styles very well, and that one AA wasn't going to be enough. Instead, he AA'd him through the announce table. AJ Styles still beat the count, but he was on the verge of losing. He still locked in the calf crusher, but ended up being what cost him because Cena lifted him and hit the AA 1, 2, 3. Great match. It was back and forth stuff on steroids. There was no story for the most part, barring Cena's desperation to win, but who cares? It's a Smackdown match used to build the pay-per-view match, and it was great. All of the guys came out and tried to make their mark, but it was Cena who stood tall. Now again, I really liked that match. It was a looser version of their previous ones, and something to show if you want to put the entire feud in one short match. Obviously, it's not their best stuff, but it was AJ's best match in this title reign up to this point. And that's saying something, because it blew away every one of his matches, non-title, title matches, whatever. John Cena will always be his most iconic opponent because when he crossed that road, he cemented himself as an even bigger legend of the industry and an icon of WWE as well. It was nice to see them run it back here again. Styles spoke about his title match ahead of Fastlane. He said that it's a grind to get to this point, and that grind doesn't stop. Fastlane was a great example of that, a 6-pack challenge. The odds were against him again, but he wasn't going to complain about it because he was going to fight. He made mention of the match against John Cena, a match that saw him lose clean. Styles showed a promo of Cena saying he'll give him a rematch at WrestleMania, but AJ clearly didn't want that. He didn't want to walk into WrestleMania as a challenger, not to mention that he wanted Shinsuke Nakamura. Fastlane was for the dream match. At the end of the day, Styles wanted that match more than anything. Dolph Ziggler interrupted and said AJ's not phenomenal anymore. He's desperate. Says the most desperate wrestler of the 2010s, Dolph Ziggler. When you hear that name, you hear desperation. And AJ said almost the same thing after I did. He told him not to listen to the fans because they'll turn on him. He did one of those yaps where he complains and says that AJ could forget about that dream match. They had a long match afterwards that was ruined by Zayn and Owens, and Shane turned into a fatal 5-way with the guys from the title match except for John Cena. Sami won this match. He turned on his friend and showed that nothing was going to separate them from going after the WWE Championship. With that said, the 6-pack challenge at Fastlane was great. It was centered on 3 stories: Cena's road to WrestleMania, Owens and Zayn's hatred of Shane McMahon, and AJ Styles' determination to make the dream match happen. He had a lot of pressure on his shoulders because this was his last big challenge and his last hurdle before the show of shows. Cena was 99 overall early on, dropping everyone to AA. So they jumped in. Each man had their moment here, but the real notable ones were Kevin Owens and AJ Styles. It was really exciting. That deep 6 was incredible, as was that toss, and KO realized he had a great chance to send AJ Styles to the announce table, but ended up being Cena who dropped him with an AA. This was when Zayn and KO really got comfortable and even had a battle against each other. Then Owens accidentally superkicked Shane McMahon and he had the title one with the pop-up powerbomb, but then Shane pulled the ref, leading to the haluva kick. Same thing with him. Shane didn't want to see him champion. They started going crazy with the finishers when AJ Styles came in from out of nowhere with a phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3. Wonderful match. It really set up the stories well for WrestleMania. There was great camera work showing AJ's triumph and Sami and KO's heartbreak, and transitioned to Cena looking let down by the result of that match, and it was great stuff. This confirmed Shinsuke Nakamura's opponent being AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. I remember it being insane because not only was this match happening, but it was happening at WrestleMania, and it was for the most valuable title in WWE history. Insane stuff here, and the hype was off the charts with this one. Styles was hyped over winning the match and said that his reward at WrestleMania awaits. Everything about his WWE run is unbelievable, including the fact that he's walking into WrestleMania with the WWE Championship. In front of him was one of the Japanese greats, Shinsuke Nakamura. They share similarities, but the one big difference was the WWE Championship. Now at the time, Shinsuke Nakamura had a lot of momentum by his side. It sounds a bit unbelievable now because of how different he is, but back in 2017 and 18, there was a lot of interest and hype behind Nakamura to the point where it felt like a foregone conclusion before he'd win the title. Very charismatic and different to the rest of the roster. He told Styles his dream will come true. Rusev interrupted and led to a match. Nakamura watched on and even saved them from an attack. Shinsuke didn't need his help though the following week. There was still a worry from Styles that this match would get harmed, and he wanted Shinsuke at his very best and ensured it by being ringside for his match with Shelton Benjamin, because Chad Gable was around. After the match, the King of Strong Style called him in and said he didn't need his help. He once again said he'll beat him at WrestleMania. It was mind games and Styles didn't bother wasting time in playing. The champion said they're gonna put on a show at WrestleMania, but his dream match is gonna go a little different. That'll prove he is the best because Nakamura is considered just that. And he responded saying AJ is gonna lose because he's too emotional. Gable and Benjamin attacked and Shinsuke Nakamura used this as a way to play games. On the final Smackdown before WrestleMania, both men gave their final thoughts. AJ admitted that his emotions are always on display, but there is strength. He opted to focus on Shinsuke's weakness. The fact that he's the WWE champion. That's the weakness. Nakamura, on the other hand, said he was playing games, but it was all serious. AJ Styles wasn't someone to be taken lightly, and he knew what he was capable of, but was still using that emotion to his advantage. Their egos were on display for the tag team main event. Styles demonstrated what the phenomenal forearm was and brought out a lot of intensity from Shinsuke Nakamura. He did the same thing that Shinsuke did the previous week to him. So this is what it comes down to. The pinnacle of professional wrestling and two men that exude the greatness of the industry. Styles and Nakamura shouldn't be here, but their pure talent and timing is what it comes down to. Wrestle Kingdom initially seemed like the beginning. WrestleMania was going to be the apex and a match that shows both men in their final form. We didn't even consider the possibility of this being a disappointment. It's like Elon Musk trying to imagine himself broke. WWE didn't even put much effort in the build because they thought the match sold itself. You guys saw the build was. It's just like, I'm the better man, blah blah blah. They didn't even fight in the lead up to this match. They didn't have a brawl, none of that. Shinsuke had a grand entrance with Nita Strauss playing the guitar. It was wonderful and seemed like a foregone conclusion, a formality. Shinsuke used his mind games, but AJ was emotional. His aggression led to Nakamura taking control. The match was slow and had a certain pace to it. Shinsuke and AJ were wrestling like they were gonna have a 60-minute match. This needed to be a WWE 2016 match on steroids. You know, that's the thing that it should have been. It wasn't thrilling. When AJ hit the Styles Clash, that was the most exciting moment and it ended there. AJ escaped the Kinshasa and hit the Styles Clash to retain the title. It needed more. Not more time, but more exciting moments, because if they did that for a few more minutes, it would have allowed for those back and forth and potentially a super finisher from AJ to retain the title. Instead, it was a match that left a lot to be desired. I didn't think it was bad then and still don't, but for what it was hyped as, not to mention the Wrestle Kingdom match, this was disappointing. Shinsuke embraced with AJ but then low-blowed him to turn heel. Everyone was hyped for the heel turn at the time because it meant their feud would be taken to another level. He even dropped him with a Kinshasa. Nakamura had no remorse over his actions but said he got too emotional. When he was asked again, he decided to say he doesn't speak English. AJ Styles didn't feel like talking about him at the moment, opting to focus on Daniel Bryan. Bryan was back as a performer and Styles was excited to face him for the first time in WWE. Now this was better than WrestleMania. AJ and Bryan were masters of the ring, so it was almost a dream match to see them again. Very fast chain wrestling early on. Bryan's technical skills were on full display here along with his viciousness. Great TV match. They don't have a lot of time, but they made the most out of it, with Bryan looking extremely motivated and AJ Styles wanting to bring out something as well. But then Shinsuke Nakamura interfered. He went after both men and laid out Styles with a low blow and Kinshasa. Then another low blow. It was bizarre. Styles was furious and he could have went after him last week, but decided on the dream match with Daniel Bryan. Nakamura though was still one step ahead, and just when his balls are healing, he's back. And then you have Big Cass as Bryan's first program. Stuff was random back then. Styles was still positive even though his balls were being targeted. He thought he was gonna soften him up, but again, he went for the low blow. It was a weird build because Nakamura touched Styles' junk more than he had words spoken in the entire build, and you'd think it should end with him winning the title with the low blow, but that's delusional. He had a new version of his theme song and I love it. I just love this version of his theme song. This match was shorter with both the guys quickly going at it and changing it up. The Saudi crowd wasn't that loud and the expectations weren't the same as previously, but one problem this match had was the fact that they were gonna face off again the following week at Backlash. Nakamura of course low-blowed him during this one, but it wasn't gonna be enough to win it. Double count out finish. This feud was falling off quickly and I remember tuning out of WWE after WrestleMania. I did watch this show because I was intrigued by it because it was the first Saudi show that was live, not to mention in a stadium, and it was on a Friday, but I don't remember this match. They had another match for Backlash, but it was going to be no disqualification. Free low blows. Styles was irritated over Nakamura being interested in the wrong jewels. Not to mention, he was asking for an apology for Styles' attack after the match. AJ said low blows will be the least of his worries. Samoa Joe interrupted. He said that AJ isn't focused on the right match, which is the one with Roman and Joe. After that, he's gonna take that title. They were teasing what's to come and Shinsuke Nakamura took advantage of this. And another one. Bro, where's the protective cup at this point? Just tape one too while you're at it. Like, just keep it there. With that said, this one looked better initially, but it got slow. The match kicks up a notch and becomes a back and forth with a lot of intensity from Shinsuke Nakamura. Styles was getting vicious with the calf crusher and was starting to figure it out when he got low blowed. At this point, he wasn't immune to it, but he wasn't entirely weak from taking it. So he low blowed him himself. Then they low blowed each other and the match was thrown. That was the funny spot in the match, but both men couldn't recover. The fans were pissed. I don't get why they were ruining this feud with each match. Here, they could have had a result. The low blow thing was funny though, I'm not gonna lie and say it's not funny. It's just the result sucks. Styles didn't like the fact that he had to stoop that low like Shinsuke, but he had to. And after Nakamura said they weren't done, he agrees and was ready for another one anywhere. The worst part in all of this is the fact that one of their best matches was a singles match on Smackdown. Styles and Nakamura were gonna face up with the winner choosing the stipulation for their match at Money in the Bank. I think it's because it's condensed, it brought out the best of what they were doing previously. Nakamura lied about the low blow and took advantage to hit the Kinshasa to win the match. They finally had a confrontation the following week. Nakamura had the match choice and Styles didn't want to waste time. He made it seem like this match was tough and grueling, and it was, because Nakamura revealed that it was a pillow fight, huh? Shinsuke stopped the jokes and said he wished to put knee to face. To AJ, it didn't matter because he beat him many times, not to mention this isn't the Shinsuke Nakamura he knew in the past. They had a brawl which saw Nakamura stand tall and reveal that it's gonna be a last man standing match. Yeah, another huge challenge for AJ Styles. The Phenomenal One didn't underestimate Nakamura but reminded everyone of what he's done up to this point. The match was confirmed but needed to be made official. AJ told him that every dirty trick up his sleeve isn't gonna work. He reacted in a way I don't even know how to explain. You can see it for yourself. I just know how to explain it. He was provoking Styles and again bringing out his emotions. Nakamura's games weren't played here because AJ slapped him. That was enough for him to sign the contract. Styles refused to apologize for his actions, and if anything, he apologized that he didn't punch him. This is Smackdown, not a playground. With that said, Money in the Bank was the finale. This rivalry wasn't really good, and in some ways lacked a lot from the story and the matches. The story was of course about Nakamura becoming bitter over losing the match at WrestleMania, but it felt like he was a champion because the man was constantly smiling as if he's got everything figured out, when he's the one chasing. It's of course mind games, but they didn't have him show much after losing 3 title matches in a row. Why wasn't Nakamura more vicious ambitious. He showed it at times, but it could have been more. And I didn't care much at the time. I wasn't watching WWE a lot here. I knew everything that was going on, but when the pay-per-view comes, I didn't bother to watch. It's like, why would I watch WWE when it's boring? Other than the fact that they started off with a collar and elbow, it was good. This was the best both men looked, and it's because it was the finale. There was nothing after this one. So they went all out and brought out a great match which tested AJ's limits and storyline. He looked super resilient here, constantly getting back up. Nakamura was booked strong here, taking a Styles Clash off the steps, and of course an important callback to the low blow with AJ dishing out a low blow that would be equivalent to 5. And if you're like, why are you saying it's equivalent to 5? First of all, it looked rougher than any of the low blows that Shinsuke Nakamura sent him, and plus, he absorbed all the power of the low blows previously to destroy him here. And to top it all off, a super phenomenal form. Great match here. They missed the chance to give Nakamura the title a while ago, and by this point, it just wasn't going to happen. The match did go on for far too long, but it was good. It was a story that managed to establish that AJ Styles was better than Shinsuke Nakamura. It was a good match. I didn't like this feud much, which is disappointing considering the names involved. Their style here didn't work, which is sad because we saw Wrestle Kingdom. We know what they are capable of, but you're not going to get that match in WWE, not to mention Nakamura hasn't had a performance close to his debut in NXT. So it was off to the next challenger. Rusev Day was a very popular thing at the time. He actually connected with the crowd. Styles congratulated him on the win, but Rusev was upset at him punching Aiden English in the face. And by the way, this was because he won a #1 contenders match. He promised to break down the door to AJ Styles' house. Styles said he's good, but not some super athlete, and he took offense to this. Rusev once again said he's going to kick him out of the house he built, and he's moving in on Rusev Day. Aiden English failed to beat Styles, so Rusev came in. He beat him up and locked him in the accolade. As you could see here, the build for this match was very short. It was more about Rusev being a transitional challenger for AJ Styles. This was the biggest match Rusev had during this Rusev Day gimmick, and remember, Rusev Day was a very big thing at the time. This was a very different match to Styles' title reign. Rusev was a powerhouse, so Styles decided to go after the leg. Rusev didn't work too hard to take control because he was a big man. He could throw Styles around, clubbing blows to the back for the accolade. The champion was writhing in pain, and the match was a bit more even with Rusev himself having the problem of his leg. It was weird dynamics here because even though Rusev had the size advantage, it didn't show much here with him being in a lot of pain throughout this one. Aiden English got involved, leading to the Machka kick and a near fall. At the same time, he was in agony over the leg. He couldn't lock the accolade and Styles was there. He had him, and once he locked it, it didn't have the same level of strength. Aiden English pulled the turnbuckle, but it ended up being a huge mistake. The 450 wasn't enough for the win. Styles took out English and hit the phenomenal forearm. 1, 2, 3. This was a good match, and I kind of hate that because to me, I enjoyed it more than any of the Nakamura and Styles matches except for the Last Man Standing one. Rusev fought hard, but he was up against an all-timer, not to mention had the leg targeted. Styles followed up with a match against Andrade on Smackdown, and it wasn't a big match, but it was solid stuff that also reminded me how exciting Andrade was in 2018. As for the next challenger, the Smackdown general manager Paige was going to reveal AJ Styles' next opponent for the WWE Championship. James Ellsworth came out, and it was funny because it was a flash into the past. This guy's chin couldn't pack a punch, and he was talking like he had a chance. But then again, he does have 2 hands, so you guys know the whole saying. After he got kicked out, Samoa Joe ran in and locked Styles in the coquina clutch. Joe was determined to make his mark and even signed a contract. Paige didn't like for him to do that, but that's the point. He's unpredictable. She chose him anyways, but he didn't bother to wait. It was about time this feud went down. These two have been connected throughout their careers in the 2000s and early 10s. It still hadn't happened in WWE though. Joe said he respected Styles but made mention of how he always preferred to be a wrestler rather than a husband to his wife. He said that Styles put the championship above everything, even if it meant that he was a failure as a father. Joe, with plenty of fury, said he'll take it all away. When he's losing, Styles' family will be cheering because once his house is torn down, they'll have their father back. Great promo here, but then again, that's expected. Samoa Joe really knows how to tell a story, and this promo is a great example of that. He used a different kind of mind games when compared to Shinsuke Nakamura. The champion said that he's doing all of this for his family, and it's not something to be proud of because it's what's expected of him. A champion might have to be away from his family, but there's always sacrifices to be made. Styles said that fathers are supposed to give their kids what they didn't have. Styles was upset because Joe knows everything about his family. He wasn't focused on just winning the match, now he wanted to make an example out of him, but Joe didn't really think much of it. A heated confrontation was looming ahead of SummerSlam. AJ admitted that Joe hit his pressure points, from the attack to the mentions of his family. He felt that he had to defend himself and he got emotional. Styles understood that he lost his cool and it showed when he went back to his family. Samoa Joe interrupted. He brought out a letter from a fan and it turned out to be his wife's. She sent this to Joe himself. Apparently, she wishes for him to lose the title because he lost her a long time ago. It would have been a missed opportunity for Samoa Joe to not use AJ Styles' emotions against him. For months, Styles acted out in emotion ever since he won the title, and Joe is a mastermind. He's the most intelligent opponent AJ's faced up to this point. Nakamura put a dent into Styles during their feud, but it was nothing compared to this because Samoa Joe decided to get personal. Bringing the closest thing to Styles is bound to lead to impulse decisions and mistakes. Even during this match, he provoked Styles' family who were in attendance. And Joe is already a world-class talent, but when you add all of these elements, he had the edge. He saw himself as the man that could correct Styles' life. All that needs to happen is a title change, and everything will be good. It's funny seeing these two facing off for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. ROH, TNA, many classics together, but Joe had it scouted. AJ's strategy was for the Calf Crusher, of course, so the challenger followed up with the same thing. Styles was unable to build momentum with Joe being all over him. It took him a while to actually do something, and it resulted in the reverse DDT for a near fall. The match was starting to kick up a notch, and Styles was working harder. Joe was aggressive, and the knee came into play here. The fans were cheering on Styles, and he managed to hit the Styles Clash, but it wasn't enough. Joe managed to lock in the Coquina Clutch, but Styles reached the rope. Since he tried everything, Joe decided to provoke his family. He said that he could be Wendy's new daddy, and Styles lost it. He got himself disqualified, and it led to a vicious beating. Now, this was a good match. Nobody likes that kind of finish, but of course they want to prolong this feud. Joe looked very aggressive here. Styles sold well and made his offense look dangerous, and it wasn't the exact moment Joe should have won the title, especially because the feud was getting started, but it felt like it was a good sign that maybe, just maybe, he was gonna win it. Styles had zero regrets over what he did, but wasn't happy about losing the match. Samoa Joe crossed the line. The champion promised that if Joe mentions his family again, he's gonna rip his heart out. This is when he came out and locked in the Coquina Clutch. He choked them out and called for Wendy again. This feud was intense, and it of course led to another match at Hell in a Cell. Styles said that Joe has him where he wants him. It also proved that he's not man enough to take the title from him. He has to bring up his family and get personal. He called him out, but Joe didn't bother because it proved this point. Instead, he wasn't ready to stop playing daddy. And again, he called Wendy. Joe said he wanted to stop by next week, and all AJ could do was watch. By the time he went to the back, Samoa Joe was nowhere to be found. He didn't visit the house because Styles was definitely blind. It was also because he wasn't a monster. Joe was trying to keep his promise of sending AJ back to his family, and he was hoping they'd get used to it more because he's gonna take the title and make him go night-night. The WWE champion was furious, but also used this to his advantage to ambush Joe, who assumed he wasn't there. Joe with a flurry of shots, but AJ Styles had some issues here, but far too much fury to stay down. Samoa Joe's efforts to get under Styles' skin seemed to work more than expected. He had him under his thumb, and all Styles could do was act out of emotion, which is what Joe wanted in the first place. Similar to last time, AJ was all in. He was going with the attacks without thinking properly, and that's what Joe wanted. Even then, he was unable to stop him because Styles was fuming. But again, that same fury was also going to get him in tough positions. He dominated the champion and had a strong hold in the match. It picks up, Joe starts locking in submission moves and thought he had the title. Styles had to bring in a lot more than usual to try and win it. The rack bomb, a beautiful springboard 450, still wasn't enough for the win. Joe had him down for the Coquina Clutch, but then left his shoulders down. But even then, he made him tap out, but after the 3 count. So he protested. It's not because he lost, but because he has to mention the name Wendy for 3 more weeks. That's the problem. Joe probably wasn't happy about the fact that he has to talk about Wendy for another month. He was enraged. Good match. This one had more of an unpredictable feeling, especially because the feud was heated at this point. Styles said Joe deserved to lose, and it was karma, and said that he could have his rematch at Super Showdown. No disqualification. Samoa Joe attacked him after his match with Andrade, and it backfired. A contract signing was set for the match. Joe didn't show up as he was at the Styles family house. AJ was very worried about this and even begged him to stay away. Joe wanted to use this as a message and an example to AJ. The feeling he's got at the moment will be the same one in Australia. He was still seething over getting robbed of the title, and it's one thing to deny it, but it's a whole other to steal it. That's the thing that Joe felt. He was bitter over that title match. Styles was clearly shook from this encounter and refused to go anywhere until Super Showdown. He said that this is gonna end. Styles wanted to bury him alive. Alright, with that said, this one wasn't bad, but didn't make the most out of their intensity. These two hate each other, but they didn't show too much here. That is until they used weapons. Joe's knee popped and Styles was unforgiving. He punished him for his sins all under the no disqualification rule. Joe still had fight and even locked in the Coquina Clutch, but it wasn't much. He brutalized that knee with a 450 splash. There was a great reverse suplex from the Coquina Clutch. He choked him in the air. It was good. Samoa Joe is a wounded animal, but still posed as a huge threat until AJ locked in the Calf Crusher. That was enough for the win. Now, similar to Shinsuke, Samoa Joe does have a claim to being someone that deserved to be champion. It's just, once again, they just didn't go with it. As I said earlier, AJ Styles is so easy to book. It just has to be that. Not to mention, he was nearing a year-long title reign, so it's like, why would he end it here? But Joe definitely did deserve it. He had good matches with Styles here. They weren't going to have their TNA matches or any of their old 2000s matches, but their matches were very good. they didn't disappoint. I personally think there was a moment where Styles could have lost it here, but it is what it is. It was easy. The Miz hosted Miz TV with his guests being AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan. Both men were gonna face off at Crown Jewel. Miz asked about the family and Styles was threatened. He wasn't trying to press him, but made mention of Daniel Bryan. He made fun of him and made him seem soft, but at the same time called him a boring wrestler. Both men had plenty of respect for each other. Miz was offended over this because to him it felt like they weren't treating the WWE Championship as the biggest prize in the industry. Miz's ego was challenged, but he calmed down and asked AJ Styles about how Bryan fares when it comes to his toughest opponents. Miz was trying hard to instigate, saying Styles said he's better than Bryan, and the American Dragon was glad that Styles thought that way, even though he never said it. He called him a worthy opponent, not someone like The Miz. AJ Styles is just that, a man that defended the coveted championship night in and night out. He deserves to think he's better than everyone else. He, Bryan, doesn't have the luxury of thinking like that. However, he said he knows he can beat AJ Styles. So the champion said he hasn't been facing tough opponents since he returned. He's talking about Daniel Bryan and his feuds, Big Cass, The Miz, and all that. Daniel Bryan said the title is why he fought so hard to come back, but then he went into detail about his dream. It was about the WWE Championship. Nothing was gonna keep him motivated like that except the title. And all that's standing in the way of that dream is AJ Styles. Styles was very confident, saying he won't move for anyone, and Miz was excited to see some drama. But a part of that drama wasn't fun because they targeted him. This led to him complaining about his previous match with Bryan and how he was robbed of the title shot, and Miz called AJ an irrelevant champion because he doesn't headline pay-per-views. He's southern and a joke, no wonder he's never in the main event. There was a lot of mutual respect between Bryan and AJ, but that would quickly change during their tag team match with the Usos. Same thing happened the following week, except this time AJ was the one who was pinned. Bryan made it seem like he did it intentionally. He also made reference to Bullet Club. Styles basically isn't who he seems to be, and at a moment's notice could become cold because he has a history with that. He was a leader of Bullet Club. Now at the time, Daniel Bryan didn't want to go on the trip to Saudi Arabia. A journalist was killed and WWE was criticized a lot from the media. John Cena himself turned down the appearance of the show, and Bryan's was somewhat bigger because he was in a marquee match. So they did something different. On the October 30th, 2018 episode of Smackdown, AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan hyped up their title match. Their issues seemed to be overlooked as Styles apologized. Bryan straight up told him that he sees the WWE Championship. AJ Styles was the last obstacle. The champion said he lied about the Pele kick as it was meant for Bryan, and he wasn't shocked at all. He felt like hitting AJ on purpose, and the champion decided to defend the title then and there. Shane McMahon made the match official, and it was on. Okay, WWE Championship. Very aggressive chain wrestling early on. The commentary mentioned the last time the title was defended, and that was of course the night Styles won it. Very fast stuff here. After the commercial break, AJ Styles noticed the left knee and went after it. He had issues with it after the suicide dive. AJ went to work with aggression and full focus on making that knee into a bigger problem for Daniel Bryan. This methodical approach greatly benefited AJ Styles and made Bryan the face of this match. Bryan's fierce uppercuts weren't enough to neuter AJ's offense. What did help was his intelligence. He knew AJ's offense very well, but the problem though was getting himself to consistently be on offense. AJ hit a dropkick to counter the knee. He couldn't hit the phenomenal forearm and instead managed to avoid a backdrop from the top. It was still rough, but not as rough as it was going to be. After the commercial break, Bryan locked in the S-lock for all of 2 seconds as AJ grabbed the rope. Crazy suplex in the apron that re-injured his knee. The champion noticed this and continued going back to work. Bryan was limping and struggling, but it wasn't going to stop him from regaining the WWE Championship. The challenger was vicious, but it was always going to be easy for Styles to get back into it. The phenomenal forearm didn't work, and he found himself in the armbar before Bryan switched to the S-lock. A year-long title reign on the verge of concluding, but Styles wasn't going out like that. He found a way to hit the Styles Clash and quickly locked in the calf crusher. The challenger was looking for any way out, and coupled with his injured knee, he struggled. Bryan didn't find a way out, and he tapped. This was a great TV match. Bryan and Styles had great chemistry together, which was expected, but watching it here, it was great. And they centered the story around the knee. Bryan fought well, he had a great performance, but it was always going to be that knee that cost him. Both men shook hands, but right afterwards, Samoa Joe attacked the champion and made his mark again. Styles was fuming and wanted a match with Joe at Crown Jewel. With that said, this one was filler. Joe was never meant to challenge for the title here, so you know how it ended. The match saw Joe overwhelm Styles early on. He fought hard to get back into it, and it was their matches in a nutshell. The Coquina clutch couldn't threaten a grandma if the WWE title was on the line, and that was no different here. It ended from out of nowhere with a phenomenal forearm. Styles was looking forward to Survivor Series. Brock Lesnar once again was the obstacle in front of AJ Styles. He was ready for the sequel. Styles was very confident, but then Paul Heyman interrupted. He talked about how Styles was almost close to being as good as Daniel Bryan. He called him the second best performer, and this seemed to greatly offend AJ Styles. He said he had respect for Bryan, but mentioned he made him tap out. Styles was ready for Brock Lesnar, but Daniel Bryan forced him to focus on him. He admitted he lost, but wanted to find a reason to punch him in the face, because he didn't like him. This was a good reason, and he threatened him. He's like, "Why are you mentioning my name? Do not talk about me." Styles clarified that Paul Heyman was the one that brought up his name and said that one of the best technical technical wrestlers is Daniel Bryan, so he triggered it. This was chaotic with both men being forcefully separated by a bunch of refs and Shane McMahon. This got so intense that Shane made a WWE Championship match between them. Daniel Bryan was a vicious individual with plenty of problems and complaints about how he's perceived. To him, he needs to be in the conversation with Brock Lesnar, not to mention his entire return rides on the WWE Championship. That's success, and up to this point, he had yet to get his hands on the belt. Daniel Bryan here looked much more composed and almost felt like he had this one figured out. He went after Styles' arm similarly to AJ, who went after his knee. The knee did end up being somewhat of a problem for Bryan, but not too much. The backdrop worked this time around, and the commentary mentioned this being a plan of Heyman's to weaken either of these guys. When it came down to it, AJ had to go after the knee. It almost worked because he locked in the calf crusher, armbar reversal into the yes lock. Styles escapes and goes to the phenomenal form. Bryan avoids it and Styles bumps into the ref, so Daniel Bryan used this to his advantage. Low blow. Styles hadn't felt one of those in a while, and Bryan had a crazed look on his face. The moment he dreamt of since his return, it was all gonna be worth it. Boom. He hits the knee. 1, 2, 3. New champion. That was a good match. This was actually a good match. Like, it wasn't better than the previous one. I liked the previous one way more, but there was a lot of aggression from Daniel Bryan here. He was vicious, he was cold, he was relentless. And that heel turn was so well done, but reading up on it from that time period, some people didn't actually like it, which is shocking. The reason why some people didn't like it was because they didn't really think much of Bryan. He didn't have the best return up to this point. Not his performances, like a lot of his performances were good, but he wasn't as hot as he was in 2014. But that heel turn was so well done, like Bryan low blowing him, using the same move Nakamura used to use on Styles to win the belt. And I will say this, I kind of felt bad. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Like, watching it here, I kind of felt bad that AJ Styles had to lose the title here. Like, obviously he had the long run and all that, but I kind of felt bad he had to lose the title here. But it had to happen, you know, like at the end of the day, he had a long run and they were probably scared that Brock was going to face him again, not to mention he's going to lose to him again. So if you put that out of the way, say Roman Reigns was champion, I think Styles would have walked into Survivor Series as WWE champion. Do I think Bryan would have turned heel? Yeah, I think Bryan would have won the title anyways from him. They weren't going to run the same match and have him lose, which again, I think if AJ Styles was going to face Brock Lesnar in Survivor Series again, he has to win. But this was in the, if you're not Roman Reigns, if you're not Seth Rollins, you cannot beat Brock Lesnar. That's what it was back then. And it was just annoying because it didn't leave a lot to be desired. Other than that, this was a great match. And yeah, I kind of felt a bit bad that AJ had to lose the title here. I'm not gonna lie. I already know the result here, but watching it through the entire run, kind of felt like, damn, he had to end it here. Alright, with that, so let's talk about the title reign. Styles did well with the title, but there was some problems. For one, he wasn't in the main event as often. Even on Smackdown, he wasn't on the main event. However, he put in performances, he was a pure workhorse and the best wrestler in WWE at the time. What I don't like about this title reign is the fact that they gave him 2 challengers and dragged their feuds. Shinsuke Nakamura and Samoa Joe. If you mentioned this in 2017, people would be proud to be like, oh, this is the best title reign of the decade. Oh, nope. Some of those matches weren't as good as they should have been, especially Shinsuke Nakamura's. On the other side, they didn't give him much strong opponents. Like, take away Shinsuke and Samoa Joe, he didn't feud with anyone notable, barring those two. You did have Bryan near the end, which was good. I think Kevin Owens as a standalone and Sami Zayn as a standalone could have been short rivalries for AJ Styles. They don't need to pair them together and do the handicap match thing. It was nonsense. Other than that, Styles worked very hard here, you know? I thought the reign did get stale near the end, but that's mostly because of the fact that his matches didn't go all out. If they had those matches he had in 2016 here, no one would be complaining. But that just goes to show you, like, people will always have a problem with long title reigns. 371 days. That's one of the longest reigning WWE Championship reigns ever. It shows you just how much WWE invested in AJ Styles. It's ridiculous. I actually think it's insane that he got to hold the title that long. My favorite match here is actually a John Cena match from Smackdown in February of 2018. I thought that match was great. So yeah.
Now, Daniel Bryan didn't really have an idea of this heel turn until the day of the show. In true WWE fashion, this was all spur of the moment. It was a day of change, and for me it was awesome because it was a clean slate. The old question when I came back was, I'm really excited to come back to wrestling, but you also have to deal with expectations, personal and company expectations and all that kind of stuff. Whereas when the heel turn happened, there's a clean slate. It's a blank page where I can draw whatever I want, and that's exciting. One of the things I loved about independent wrestling before I got to WWE is the ability to tinker with things. I could be a different character when I'm in England or Ring of Honor or Japan or Germany. I could change all these things, but it's been very fun to tinker almost every week, and I'm enjoying things that I'm playing with from a character and wrestling perspective. That's been a lot of fun. High key, this was a dream match, but Bryan's heel turn was well done. It just came from out of nowhere and changed the complexion of Smackdown Live. On his match with Brock Lesnar, Kayla Braxton asked Bryan if he was prepared. He no-sold this question and walked away. This match had more of an unpredictable element when compared to Styles' match with Lesnar. Why?
because Bryan had just won the title and this was his first appearance, so it could have gone either way. Even if Brock Lesnar had the edge, Bryan's attitude towards this match was pure confidence. He was pressing Lesnar hard with a smile on his face, and right out of the gate, Bryan went after the leg. He was jogging and dancing around and just pissing off the Universal Champion. One clubbing blow was more than enough to give Bryan a ride to the place known as Suplex City. The one-way ticket sent Bryan into a tailspin. It was getting worse and worse, and it also didn't help that he had a neck injury in the past. His tactics were thrown out the window, and he was thrown off his game big time. Smackdown's champion was about to go down with one single kick to his name in this match. F5 and Lesnar still wants to continue the match. Why? To inflict more damage and make a joke out of the WWE champion. This was a huge tactical error because when Lesnar hit the F5, he pushed Bryan into the ref, giving him a much needed opening, which he made the most out of. He kicked him in the balls and hit the knee. The crowd was all in. They believed it was over, but Lesnar kicked out. And that was all the champion needed, because from here, he dished out a grade A beatdown that displayed Bryan's newfound aggression. Lesnar looked like he bit off far more than he could chew with that mistake, and it wasn't getting any better. Yet another knee stunned the beast, but he still had enough to kick out again. Daniel Bryan opted to focus on the legs to wear down the Universal Champion, and it seemed like the victory was in sight, but he was caught in F5 position. For all of 2 seconds, and there was the yes lock. Lesnar was on the verge of tapping. Bryan was super vicious on the attack and would stop at nothing to get the tap out victory, but Lesnar's tenacity forced the escape. Armbar transitioned into the F5 and Brock Lesnar wins. A masterful performance from both men. Daniel Bryan had this vagueness about him heading into it. His attitude and intentions were very mysterious, and since he had just turned heel, nobody knew what was on his mind. Brock Lesnar, everybody knew his simple game plan. The feelings and emotions this match brought rivaled just about any. I've had so much fun watching this match again. It had incredible storytelling, Bryan weaseling his way to victory in a way only 2008 Edge could, and it's easily one of the best matches of 2018. And I'll even go as far as to say it was a top 10 match in Brock Lesnar and Daniel Bryan's career. That's how good I thought it was. Bryan was very, very, very excited to wrestle Brock Lesnar. I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled, Bryan said. I wanted the Brock Lesnar match for a long time, but how I always envisioned it was babyface Daniel Bryan, yes man Daniel Bryan, underdog Daniel Bryan against the killer Brock Lesnar. But I had literally just become the planet's champion and kicked AJ Styles in the nuts. So it was a really weird thing, but I think the weirdness of it also made it fun and made it more pleasurable for me. That match is something that I'm really, really proud of, and it was a test for me, Bryan said. I don't think there's anybody in the history of WWE who's been more excited to take a German suplex from Brock Lesnar than me. Just to be like, oh, let's see. We got to see what I got here. Am I good? German suplex? Yeah, I'm good. Later that week on SmackDown, Daniel Bryan finally addressed his actions, and at this point, it was already confirmed that AJ Styles would receive a rematch against Bryan at TLC. Daniel Bryan spoke in third person here, explaining his displeasure for betraying himself by retiring 3 years ago. His fight within was all down to being a failure, and retirement meant he failed. That's why he saw all those doctors. It was to bring himself back to the ring. 3 hours a day in those oxygen chambers, he found the opportunity to meditate and realize that fighting for your dreams will get your dreams to fight for you, and it worked. That's why he's back. It was a great moment when he returned, but the fans thought it was just that, a moment. His anger was with the fans being unable to see the struggles it took to get to that point in New Orleans. The doctors were telling him to move on. He didn't, but the fans did. Fickle is the word of the day for Bryan to describe these fans. They cheered him loud, but now it's AJ Styles. And Daniel Bryan took notice. He noticed them slowly moving on, and that's when he stopped fighting. When the referee was down, Daniel Bryan's dreams kicked AJ Styles in the balls. His dreams made him realize he didn't need these people for anything. Same thing as Survivor Series. He didn't need to beat Brock Lesnar to win. His dreams allowed him to beat the weakness out of Brock Lesnar. The Daniel Bryan that the fans loved is dead. The Yes Movement is dead, and all that was left was the new Daniel Bryan, the WWE Champion. All that mattered is Bryan doesn't give up on his dream again. I assume the dream is the title, because during the promo he was basically describing the dream as that. Incredible promo. Daniel Bryan's self-realization that the fans didn't benefit him brought him the title basically. His PTSD from those oxygen chambers, the trials and tribulations to get himself back, could have been for nothing had he never gave into his dream. As for AJ Styles, the kick in the balls brought one emotion out of him. Anger. Styles without the WWE Championship on his waist was very bizarre. It was glued to him for over a year, and seeing him without it was like seeing him naked. Styles said that the 14 days without the title felt longer than the 371 days he held the title. He hated losing, but was more angry at the way he lost it. Styles knew that being champion on Target would be on his back, and he knew that sometimes you want something so badly, but what also frustrated him was Bryan attacking him afterwards. AJ Styles was impatient and wanted to fight, but the problem was Bryan wasn't here. He told Bryan to not forget the title at TLC because it belongs to him. The following week, The Miz hosted Miz TV. His guest, the new Daniel Bryan. Miz acknowledged Bryan's change of character and credited himself for being right about things.
Daniel Bryan said that listening to the fans would ruin his dream, but he came to the realization that he doesn't care about these people and allowed his dreams to take control. He used the what chant against the fans here, calling them fickle. Bryan said that his old self combined with his intelligence of the new Daniel Bryan would be dangerous. Miz was like, I've been saying this. You won the title by doing whatever it takes. I say that. Now this is the difference maker. Daniel Bryan said that he kicked one man on one day. The fans, though, they pollute the earth in many ways, and the fans started booing. That's like what many say. 50 Cent included. You shouldn't throw stones if you live in a glass house. That's exactly what it was here. Bryan told them not to count the sins. I do one thing on one day, you guys do these things every day. And Miz looked like the babyface. His issue came down to Bryan portraying him as the bad guy. He saw through him everything. He saw through everything and asked the question, are you WWE champion because you listened to what I said? And Bryan answered yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. It didn't matter to him. All that mattered was the old Daniel Bryan was dead. The yes movement, dead. All of a sudden, AJ Styles came on and his eyes were poised for a fight. Bryan shoved The Miz into AJ and made a run for it. The Miz took it from there and hit the skull-crushing finale. Bryan followed up later that night with an attack, sending a message to AJ Styles. He's like, fickle, 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 to end SmackDown on top. Bryan the following week called the fans parasites because of their consumption and waste of the earth. He's like, oh, now you like AJ Styles. And then said that he didn't know whether or not people were stupid or just purposefully hiding themselves from stuff. All of a sudden, Mustafa Ali made his debut. Bryan interrupted him and told him to come to the ring. He tried convincing him not to have the match, calling the fans all kinds of things. Fickle, xenophobic, but Ali wasn't having it. He said that Bryan was an inspiration. The 205 Live guys looked up to him. The old Daniel Bryan would want to fight, and that's exactly what he wanted here. He then asked him, this was hilarious. He's like, what kind of car do you drive? He's like, SUV. He's like, why would a small man like you drive an SUV? And he slapped him before bossing him. Ali turned things around and the match begins. Bryan ended up tapping Ali out, continuing his newfound momentum ahead of TLC. So this is what it's come down to. AJ Styles' month was filled with anguish. He was getting attacked, was left sidelined for 2 weeks, and most importantly, lost the WWE Championship. For him, this was about redemption. For Daniel Bryan, his dream turned into a reality. He often took what the fans said to heart and considered himself the leader of the Yes Movement. Kicking Styles in the balls set him free from the prison that was the Yes Movement, and in doing so, he received the ultimate prize. His intention here was to bring out the emotions from AJ Styles. As the commentary said, Styles was at his best without the emotions at play. Bryan's vicious streak came to play and the action was slow and methodical from his part. Whenever Styles was on offense, he was wrestling with anger. This was well worked. It was slowly building up, and after the Boston Crab, which was originally supposed to be the Styles Clash, it kicked up a notch. What it came down to was Bryan's intelligence in a sudden small package. These men fought their hearts out, and I think we, the people, forget just how good this match was, because it really was incredible. There's nothing talking about it. You just have to watch it, you know? Like, I can't really explain why it was so good. It was just well done. I'm not gonna say it was as good as others say it is, you know, like Dave Meltzer gave this match almost 5 stars, but it was great and definitely was one of WWE's best matches from 2018. In a surprise turn of events, Mustafa Ali scored a victory over the new Daniel Bryan on Smackdown. An upset. It was a big win, and this led to Daniel Bryan attacking him the following week. Meanwhile, Vince McMahon asked AJ Styles what his name was. He said that this is AJ Styles and this is the house that he built. And McMahon couldn't bring himself to understand why Styles was allowing Bryan to compete and do whatever he wants in his house. He believed that Styles was complacent and was hiding a burning hole inside. McMahon wanted that animal to be brought out, and Styles did it. It felt like a segment straight from 2003. It just gave off that vibe, you know. McMahon's like, I want to see the real you, this and that. He took the strike and was proud of himself despite being on the verge of dying from an AJ Styles punch. When their next confrontation occurred, Styles was very hostile and refused to apologize, saying McMahon intentionally provoked him. And he got what he wanted. This was clearly a plan from the boss, as AJ Styles went on to become #1 contender for the title at the Royal Rumble. With AJ Styles getting his rematch, Daniel Bryan wanted to teach him something. Now I assume AJ likes meat, but how does this relate to him? Well, he was complaining about the concession stands and trashed the audience for eating hot dogs, candy. And he started talking about how the fans try to fill that empty void. And that's why they cheer AJ Styles. Now, at this point, I never seen someone get pressed at somebody else for eating hot dogs or soda like this. Like, this bro literally destroyed him, threw a soda at the other guy, and began shouting about stuff, how it's a waste. Like, he literally just wasted it over here, right? It's like everything's a waste. AJ Styles' merch, it's a way to fill empty voids, and it's meaningless. And he said that the fans were weak and submissive, impotent, and he wanted to change all of it. From out of nowhere, R-Truth attack. They have a match. Bryan wins, but afterwards, AJ Styles brought the fight. On this incident, Bryan asked if Styles attacked him to fill the void for the fans, or is he attacking him because he's not the WWE champion? He promised that this was nothing, nobody's seen what he's capable of, and said that he'll never take the championship away from him. Why? Because he's fighting for a bigger cause. AJ Styles, meanwhile, did the opposite of what Bryan had been preaching. He was giving. Dan Bryan, of course, wasn't too fond of all this giving, or as he calls this, meaningless stuff. This didn't go the way he planned, and Bryan had yet to figure out the real AJ Styles yet. On the final SmackDown before the Royal Rumble, Mr. McMahon hosted a face-to-face confrontation between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. Bryan refused to stand in the same ring as AJ Styles and said that he had a vision of Styles as champion. He called it an ignorant, impotent future. That's why he refuses to allow him to take this. He said that AJ Styles uses his fame for power and money, whereas he uses it for the greater good. Styles asked him, like, if you talk about the greater good, why you come out and talk like a jackass or something along the lines of that? He said that Styles never made the fans think. He doesn't make them feel bad about themselves, and that's what he does. He's not the people's champion, he's the planet's champion. There it is. Bryan uses his platform to be the planet's voice, and Styles said that if the planet had a voice, it'd be screaming for Bryan to shut up. And he found it ironic. He said that Bryan didn't ride a bike to the show, he rode on a plane as well, and he called it fickle. Styles claimed that Bryan had fear in his eyes. He called out Bryan's morals being corrupted for the title and asked what he'll have left when he loses it. Vince had enough of this and he's like, hop on, get your ass in the ring. He then called them out, saying his generation took and gave nothing back, yet the fans bowed to him for it. They're out here looking for Instagram likes while McMahon hoards all the money. He told them once again to get in the ring. Bryan refuses and Styles goes after him. He was about to hit the phenomenal forearm when Bryan pushed Vince in the way, leading to the knee. Okay, good ass build. I do think it should have been an ODQ match because these two had a couple of matches together, here and there, and that would have been great for the blow-off. Okay, with that said, the new Daniel Bryan's environmentalist mindset made him believe he was on a higher level when compared to the likes of AJ Styles' fans. Their shallowness and indulgence in nonsense was what fueled Bryan. He felt that he had a burden on his shoulders to make the world a better place, but AJ Styles, though, saw right through this virtue signaling. When it came down to it, Bryan violated his morals to win the title. Unfortunately, though, as good as the build was, and it didn't follow up their classic at TLC. The thing is, they were almost booked. Becky had just won the women's match, Brock and Finn were going to face off, and they were still the main event. So something had to change here. It was very methodical and extremely slow but technical. There's nothing outright wrong about the action, but it was on autopilot. They knew that they couldn't really go all out because, well, they didn't want to get the fans tired. They worked well targeting the arm and in AJ Styles' case the leg. The problem was the crowd didn't care and they didn't try to go all out. It also didn't help that the match didn't have the intensity of the feud because this should have been no DQ. All of a sudden Eric Rowan came out and this was one of the loudest the crowd was during the match. And it wasn't that loud, I just wanted to mention that. He stood there and looked so damn out of place. It's like, why are you even here? But he ended up interfering and dropping Styles, leading to Bryan retaining. He fouled up afterwards and Bryan hit the knee, and it just wasn't the best match. But luckily, the next time they had a title match, they rectified him. As for the feud, I enjoyed it. This was very good. Styles, he brought out that pit bull mentality, that anger that everyone knows he has occasionally. It was great here. It's just, the match should have been no DQ. It would have fit in line with the feud. Later that week on Smackdown, Bryan said that a victory for himself is a victory for the planet and insulted the fans, saying they don't know what winning feels like. And Rowan was somebody that shared similarities with his mind. He praised Rowan for reading all kinds of things. Sure, his hands are dirty, but he's his intellectual peer. Bryan made mention of the hypocrite statement from AJ Styles and agreed. Why? Because he carries around the title. He said that this was bound to the skin of a cow, and he called the cow Daisy, and described the life that Daisy could have lived if it wasn't for the pain she suffered for this. And he threw the title in the trash. Bryan brought out the new title and he called it the new symbol of the excellence, and damn did it look ugly. That title looked horrible, but it really fit the new Daniel Bryan well. Like, this guy was really going all out to eradicate the waste, the pollution, or whatever, in general, whatever waste people were doing on the earth, this guy was all about changing that. AJ Styles interrupted full of anger because of Bryan disrespecting the title, and he found it ironic that Bryan hates big companies, yet he brought out the biggest insurance policy he could have. Rowan. Randy Orton followed up, and after the commercial break, Ali and Jeff Hardy were here. He was talking when Orton's like, didn't you get beat up by a girl at the Rumble? And then there's Samoa Joe. Joe said that he's gonna defang the Viper, told Hardy to shut up like it's an AA meeting. Mustafa's a boy upon men, and he reminded him of the Coquina clutch from last week. And AJ, he asked him about Wendy. Okay, this is a promo that everybody talks about on Twitter every couple of weeks. It's like, oh, remember that time Samoa Joe did this? Like, I think if you go on Twitter, you have an idea of this promo. I'm pretty sure you memorized it verbatim, word for word. Even the expressions that Samoa Joe had, because they always put that thing on Twitter all the time. Shout out to my Twitter. A brawl ensues and Bryan refuses to defend against any of them. All of a sudden, Triple H interrupted. He told Bryan that he's not facing one of those guys, he's facing all of them in an Elimination Chamber match. The brawl continues as SmackDown goes off the air. Daniel Bryan received a homestay welcome the following week, and he was even called the son of Washington. He said that he finally spoke to people that understood what he wanted to do here. The new WWE Championship is a symbol for people to rally behind. The old title may have been a symbol of excellence, but it was also a symbol of excess. Unlike that, the title is a symbol for change. Rowan said that thinkers like himself and Daniel Bryan are considered dangerous. That's despite the ideas being good. Bryan said that he served a greater power than fame. He's the planet's champion. The planet needs him as champion. Later that night, Jeff Hardy was on the verge of beating the planet's champion when Rowan interfered. Samoa Joe refused to be forgotten and locked in the coquina clutch before Randy Orton made a run in. AJ Styles comes in and Bryan didn't want none. I mean, AJ Styles' theme song says it, and they don't want none. And that's what Bryan did here. He started going off on how he's the best, called Rowan his intellectual peer, and denied him being his bodyguard. He's like, oh, I need somebody to think like me. It's not about him being my bodyguard. AJ Styles' music is playing all while Bryan was telling himself that he's holding the title in a paranoid voice. He's all red, he's all angry, in the background's AJ Styles' music. Unfortunately, Mustafa Ali was unable to compete in the Elimination Chamber match after suffering an injury. He said that it wasn't the end and that it'll take a whole lot more to take him out. You know, he was getting a little push at the time, so it's a bit unfortunate, but it also opened the door for somebody else. In a somewhat surprise turn of events, Kofi Kingston was chosen to replace him. It works because Kofi had a reputation on Smackdown. He was one of the most reliable guys, and sure, he wasn't going to win, but he was going to put on a show. With the Elimination Chamber coming up, all 6 men participated in the gauntlet match. Bryan and Kofi had a long-ass match, and at face value, the champion was the champion, but even as champion, there's sometimes trouble in paradise. I hope you guys understood that. And in a huge upset, Kofi Kingston eliminated Daniel Bryan. He put in one hell of a performance going through everybody else before falling to AJ Styles. After SmackDown, I'll never forget this. I began seeing Photoshop edits of Kofi Kingston as WWE Champion. It was on Instagram. I'm like, what the hell? Already? I was like, damn, sign me up. This was the closest he got to the title in years, but we all believed it would end after the Elimination Chamber. Bryan expressed displeasure for being first in the gauntlet match and now first in the Elimination Chamber. In terms of chamber matches, I said that word a lot. Top 5, I think. I feel like it's the best in recent memory. It was that damn good. Feuds were ignited and championship hopes were dashed. For Kofi Kingston, this was a miracle waiting to happen. His performance really got the fans believing, and since it was Daniel Bryan in the ring, it felt like a possibility. He was taking all this punishment and was dishing it out as well. Daniel Bryan was being eviscerated and the fans were all in. This was the same man they vicariously defended for years, and now they found their new hero in spite of his attitude towards them. Somebody that actually represented them. Bryan caught Kofi with the knee and everybody knew it was over, but man, he kicked out. Kofi bounced back with the trouble in paradise, but it wasn't enough, and his dream was slowly fading because he was locked in a label lock. He reaches the ropes and goes on the offense again, but this time though, he made a crucial mistake leading to the knee, and Bryan retains. That crowd wanted the Kofi win more than anything. It was what everyone hoped would happen, and WWE made you believe it before taking it away. Kofi received a standing ovation for his performance, but the disappointment was still on his face. His efforts turned up and unlocked the storyline that many had hoped and wished for, the WWE Championship story. Later that week on SmackDown, Kofi was looking forward. He appreciated the fans for looking out for him and making Kofi Mania trend, and said that it wasn't possible if it wasn't for Big E and Xavier. He promised to keep his momentum going, and that's exactly what Kofi did. He dropped Daniel Bryan with the Trouble in Paradise once again for the 1-2-3 in tag team action. Kofi Mania was starting to become a real thing, and it was at the perfect time. Shane McMahon after the match came out and gave Kofi another title shot for Fastlane, and as he said, 11 years. He waited too damn long for it. What I most enjoyed about this storyline is the unpredictable element. At the time, Daniel Bryan was facing 0-time world champion Kofi Kingston. At face value, it's like, oh, he's beating him and facing insert name at WrestleMania. But the difference here is the incredible reception Kofi received over the last few weeks. I always wanted to see him win Money in the Bank, but the potential for this storyline was even better. It was all on WWE to follow up because the result could be one of the most compelling things in years. Kofi was a man of the people. His connection with the crowd was absolutely undeniable, and being the deserving underdog gave this story a sense of realism. The fans repeatedly chanted at him that he deserved it, and he's waited for 11 years for this opportunity. He acknowledged that this wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for the fans, and he said that at Fastlane, he's going to beat Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. Bryan signs the contract, and just as Kofi signs, Mr. McMahon interrupted. He told Kofi that he's appreciated everything over the past 11 years, but he wanted to give the fans the biggest box office draw. So Kofi was being replaced. The New Day were his boys shouting and complaining, and the replacement, McMahon said he was more deserving, more qualifying. It was Kevin Owens. Xavier and Big E were backing him hard, and this image looked so damn sad. Big E's like, how much more does he have to do? After the commercial break, Kevin Owens showed gratitude for receiving this opportunity, but also mentioned the smile that Bryan and Rowan had on their faces. He wanted to team up with Kofi, who was deserving of a title shot, against them.
This match saw Kevin Owens score the victory with a stunner, and I believe this was the debut of the stunner for KO. Daniel Bryan didn't like Kofi being replaced by Kevin Owens, and it went from the guy that threw pancakes to the guy that eat pancakes and compared him to the fans. He did praise him though for being a nobody, because being a nobody means you have nothing to lose, whereas Bryan, has everything to lose. He loses, the entire planet loses, and he didn't want to be called a martyr, but Kevin Owens interrupted. He didn't let him finish. Owens talked about watching every Smackdown while away on the couch, to which Bryan said, "Where you belong." Owens loved watching Smackdown, but when Bryan was on, it was awful watching him talk down to everyone. Speaking on everybody's behalf, Owens was glad to be the one that shuts up Bryan. He told Owens that he shouldn't worry about his mouth, and KO felt that it was odd that the educated Daniel Bryan was resorting to fat jokes. He felt that Owens was low bro, and so were the fans, and Kevin Owens was glad to be like the people and thinking Bryan was a jackass. He said that he didn't have a reality show, a 7-foot backup dancer, and the champion said that the reason why he doesn't have one is because he doesn't have any friends left. Kevin Owens told him that it's his 100% intention to beat him and take the WWE title. He got into it with him, but the heels overwhelmed him, and his match with Rowan didn't end so well later that night, as he had to be saved by the returning Mustafa Ali. This was all Kevin Owens needed, and by the end of it, he dropped the champion with a stunner. As for Kofi Kingston, he was promised a meeting with the boss. The fan support was extremely overwhelming. The New Day spoke on his behalf and told McMahon to do the right thing and make the title match a triple threat. He told him the match was on and New Day was barred from ringside. Kofi Kingston was extremely elated at receiving this opportunity, but it turned out to be a match with the bar. This match was a brutal beatdown of Kofi, and New Day tried saving him, but Nakamura and Rusev attacked them. As for the WWE Championship match, it was still a triple threat. Everyone wanted it to be Kofi Kingston, but it ended up being Mustafa Ali. This was the match where I started looking at him differently. I knew he was talented, but it took one hell of a performer to get this crowd into the match. You know, you don't see that often where the crowd gets won back into the match after a decision goes the way they don't want it to. That's what Mustafa Ali did here. His selling and high-flying abilities really got the fans into the match. Bryan took him out initially, leading to a one-on-one match with Kevin Owens. He had a red beat chest and was full of aggression. It's a testament to these men's ability to turn things around. Ali was out here hitting a 450 on the apron, all to win the title. So many great spots, and the Ali element really added to the match. It was already going to be good, but it was better. And the ending was awesome, with Bryan catching Ali with a vicious knee in the air to retain the title. It was really a well-done match in spite of the crowd. As for the Kevin Owens arc, I think we were going to see more of it, but Kofi Mania took over, so I don't really have much to say about it. I think it would have been interesting to see the family man Kevin Owens go one-on-one with the planet's champion. You know, he's like, "Oh, I'm just like these people. You think you're special? I'm going to take you back down to earth," or this and that. It would have been good, but what we got was even better. With Kevin Owens and Mustafa Ali behind, Daniel Bryan still had to worry about Kofi Kingston. Mr. McMahon was set to make an announcement regarding WrestleMania at the same time, and he explained that when he made the triple threat, he didn't say Kofi was in the match and called him a failure. He said that match was for a reason. He was teaching him a lesson. The New Day said they didn't care. They said that they did everything for him, and this man has been here grinding for 11 years. McMahon said that Kofi, the people, don't deserve a damn thing. Even he doesn't deserve a damn thing. Big E said that this is bigger than Vince's ego, which he didn't believe. And he spoke on behalf of the fans, saying Kofi deserves a WWE Championship match. Kofi Mania was in full swing, and the fans refused to take no for an answer. McMahon said that he wished Kofi deserved this, and said that if he was worthy, it would have happened a long time ago. He praised him for his talent and said that he's going into the Hall of Fame, but not by himself, but a part of the New Day. He also claimed Kofi was riding Big E and Woods' coattails in a way. He wasn't outright saying it, but he was heavily implying it. He's good, but not championship material in the irony. Daniel Bryan's take was correct in his eyes. He had a meeting with him and said that Kofi Kingston is a B+ player. And this is when he finally spoke. He said that 11 years ago, he was just a kid with a dream. Since then, he's provided for his family. He travels the world, but felt that at some point, his worthiness was proven. No complaining despite his consistencies. Others get opportunities despite being inferior. His son lost his first tooth and he wasn't there because he was here. No complaints. He wasn't whining about that. Kingston also held resentment for somebody like him not contending for the WWE Championship and straight up told him to tell him what he needs to do so he could do it. Out of everyone to interrupt, it was Randy Orton. All he's got to do is beat him, Samoa Joe, The Bar, and Rowan in a gauntlet match, and if he does, he's going to WrestleMania. Man, WrestleMania seems like a continent away. Daniel Bryan, on the other hand, didn't see why he should even deserve a title shot, but Kofi was out to prove him wrong. Half of the episode saw Kofi go through the men that Vince lined up for him. It was rough, long, and Kofi was worn out by the end of it, but it just so happened that he managed to be on the winning side. Mr. McMahon came out and congratulated Kofi, and he said that Kofi is going to WrestleMania if he beats Daniel Bryan. For Bryan, this was like the SCR 2010 menu. He's wrestling a dummy initially. Kofi had some fight, but it wasn't enough, and he lost.
The New Day were furious with these turn of events, and their boy was screwed over. The outpouring support for Kofi Kingston was still overwhelming, and it wasn't going to stop. The hardest part of all this for Xavier and Big E was watching how badly Kofi was being treated. So now they wanted McMahon to address them face to face so they could talk about their issues. Daniel Bryan told McMahon to let them quit if they want because they're stale. He said that they could bring up 3 people from NXT and call them Fresh Afternoon. They'll be more successful because Kofi is a B+ player. So basically, Daniel Bryan's taken the role of the authority back in 2014. He claims he's the A+ player and assists with the hurdles from Mr. McMahon. It's a crazy turnaround from 5 years earlier. Bryan praised McMahon's instincts for believing Kofi isn't good enough, and he said to the fans they're wrong, and similar to Kofi, they refuse to accept reality. Xavier Woods questioned Bryan, saying he's scared of facing Kofi and turned into a hypocrite by becoming the very thing he hated. McMahon shut them up and said that the New Day won't quit. It's a lie. He told Kofi he's a B+ player, but what about these two? Are you a B+ tag team? So he was going to give them the opportunity to win Kofi his spot at WrestleMania. If they won the tag team gauntlet match, Kofi's going to WrestleMania. They went through Gallows and Anderson, Rusev and Nakamura, the Bar, and then they got attacked. To top it all off, Big E was sent through a table. The Usos were next, and the New Day were basically finished. The SmackDown Tag Team Champions were eager for a fight, and they grabbed the mic. They said that they've been through wars, but Kofi Kingston deserves a WWE title shot. He earned their respect, and Jimmy Uso told them, good luck, because we forfeit. Incredible, incredible. I love that moment. They had this mutual respect for each other. They didn't really like each other, but at the end of the day, they could see what's real. And Kofi Kingston in the WWE Championship match is just that. Daniel Bryan in the back karate kicked the TV in outrage over these turn of events. After the commercial break, the final tag team in the gauntlet match came out. Bryan intelligently targeted Big E's knee, and the entire SmackDown roster was in support of the New Day, and with the support of everybody on their backs, they emerged victorious and won their friend Kofi Kingston the opportunity to challenge for the most coveted gold in the WWE at WrestleMania. They took out Rowan and managed to win it by Kana, and that's what a friendship is all about. Kofi Kingston, through all the trials and struggles, was backed by his New Day brethren. Through it all, they broke the Tag Team Championship record, defeated some of the greatest tag teams, but for Kofi, something was missing. Now, he gets the chance to prove what he's made of, and Vince billed the match as being Daniel Bryan versus a B+ player. On the final SmackDown before WrestleMania, both men went face-to-face for a contract signing. Daniel Bryan wanted to teach him a lesson, and he told the fans not to be complacent like Kofi Kingston has for 11 years. He told them not to be a bystander in their own lives, not to watch and hope while Xavier Woods and Big E try fighting for him. Daniel Bryan mentioned that he was in the same position as Kofi. The way they chanted yes is the same way they chant Kofi for him. He said that he doesn't feed off of it, they feed off him. Why? Because they're parasites. Bryan told him to suck all of this in because this is the best it's going to be, and he finally spoke. Kofi Kingston told him that for months they've heard him try to talk, but now he's the one who's going to educate him. Bryan became the world champion within the first 2 years of debuting. He understood it, but 11 years and he's never had a singles match for the WWE Championship. He saw the fear in Bryan's eyes. He knows that he's ready, and what comes next is WrestleMania, where he becomes WWE Champion. Kofi signs, and man, this was what we were all waiting for. Kofi Mania was real. We've all seen this guy come through as the excited Jamaican with all the moves in the world. His incredible moveset easily stood out amongst one of the most stacked WWE rosters of all time, and he captured the mid-card titles, beat Randy Orton, multi-time tag team champion, but throughout this illustrious career, he still didn't receive a one-on-one title shot for the World Heavyweight Championship or the WWE Championship. The appreciation the crowd had for Kofi Kingston was special. It was in many ways similar to Daniel Bryan's, a man who was being deliberately held back in favor of others, and in Kofi's case, it was worse. Daniel Bryan's ability to fit seamlessly in the role that he fought against 5 years ago is a testament to his incredible talent. It's crazy that this man got the entire crowd booing him now, despite these people cheering him like crazy 5 years earlier. I know it feels like Kofi Kingston basically took over this part of the video, but that's literally it. I can't be talking about Kofi Mania and try to undermine it or underrate it for the sake of another topic. Okay, I wanted this match to main event back then and wish it still happened to this very day. Well, it is what it is. In the beginning, both men were slowly trying to find the edge. Nobody had the outright advantage, although the edge was with Kofi. His high-flying ability coupled with his impressive agility made him a problem for the new Daniel Bryan. But the same thing that brought him the advantage also sent him to defense. The champion had this meticulous eye for weaknesses, going after the abdomen. He was locking in submission holds, making the match much more of a problem for Kofi, and his offense was severely hampered by the work from Bryan, but he had the WrestleMania World Championship match boost. It wasn't going down without a fight. Kofi avoids the knee and gets a 2 count before hitting the SOS. This led to him getting locked in the label lock. Bryan's stinging kicks were supposed to do a number on the abdomen, but all they did was ignite the momentum that Kofi Kingston was searching for. Rowan gets involved, leading to a brawl with the New Day, and back in the ring, Kofi was going to get his moment. Bryan ducks and boom, the knee. It was going to end. It was a nice one while it lasted, but it was going to come to an end. 1,
2-0. Bryan's vicious streak emerged from the depths of hell, and his burning desire of being the spokesperson for the planet was gonna drive him to victory. Kofi was locked in a label lock, the hope was fading. Fans were trying to rally him on, and for any other man, they would have given up, but this man had 11 years of fury and rejection. He beat Bryan senselessly, and his moment was coming. Trouble in Paradise, 1, 2, 3, new champion. Kofi Kingston's journey had its ups and downs, but there's no denying that that's what makes this moment so special. It wasn't meant to happen. Kevin Owens was heavily rumored to face Bryan at WrestleMania. Nobody had Kofi Mania on their cards, but it caught on like wildfire and ignited the fire that led to Kofi Kingston capturing the WWE Championship. This is easily one of the most special moments I've seen in wrestling. Wrestling is scripted, of course, but for a moment to be as special as this, it has to have a sense of realism. We didn't know Kofi would win here, and that element makes you want to see him win. His story was written for 11 years, and we've been wanting to see him as champion for years, even if it was a short title reign, and it finally happened at WrestleMania 35. In East Rutherford, New Jersey. Amazing. Match of the night for WrestleMania 35. Probably my favorite WWE match from 2019. I don't think there's any match that tops it in my mind. There was this amazing storytelling. The match itself was great. The action itself. And then you had the story on top of it of a man who was desperately searching for his first title shot, who was desperately looking to win his first world title in his first title match. It was a great match. It was amazing. For Bryan, this was the proudest championship reign of his career. Being the planet's champion was by far my favorite. It's interesting because in WWE, my reigns have never been very good. I won the championship at WrestleMania 30, but had to vacate it sometime later due to a neck injury, and I also won the World Heavyweight Championship in 2011, but lost it in 18 seconds at WrestleMania 28. Those reigns didn't feel as special as when I was Planet Champion and Bad Boy. I love the way it started, and everyone who competes hates to lose a championship, but if we're going to lose it, let it be in a great match at WrestleMania against somebody who really deserves it. And that's what happened when I lost that one against Kofi Kingston. I had a lot of fun with that reign, and I love the Hemp Championship. Okay, that's Daniel Bryan's WWE Championship reign. I loved it. This is easily one of the best WWE title reigns in recent memory. It stands out like crazy. This man changed his entire character. The way he dressed was even different. His mic skills were great. The way he insulted the fans and his intentions were all amazing. His intentions were right. The execution was wrong, basically. Bryan's right about a bunch of things, but at the end of the day, he was a douche about it. His matches, great. Pay-per-view, all of them delivered except the Royal Rumble. I do wish we'd seen more of it, but Kofi Mania happened. You know, you can't let something like Kofi Mania just go because you want to see more of the new Daniel Bryan. Because he was eventually going to lose the title, right? Kofi Kingston wasn't going to get Kofi Mania if they let it go. For Bryan, this run cemented him as an all-timer, in my personal opinion. There's just something special about somebody that changes their entire character and succeeds. You know, to this very day, many people say, oh, the new Daniel Bryan was the best run of his career. You know, this is despite his WrestleMania, his WrestleMania 30 run, this and that. People say this is his best run, and I could see exactly why. He really put his all into this character, and it's definitely knows. We love this character. Daniel Bryan, the new Daniel Bryan, is easily one of his best runs in his career. My favorite match from this run was Kofi Mania. It just has to be, right? You know, the story itself, it trumps everything, it tops everything in this run, in my personal opinion, so yeah. Seth Rollins became champion at WrestleMania 2, Becky Lynch, all that. It was a special time. I remember the fans were happy that WWE had actually listened to them, especially with Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston. He kicked off Raw the next night talking about stuff when Kofi Kingston interrupted. He had an incredible reaction from the crowd, and it was the Raw after WrestleMania, so the crowd was really into it. But this ended up being a bigger scam than Backlash 2018. He came out with the New Day. Fans chanted his name, showing a lot of respect, and the New Day showed Rollins appreciation and honor for winning the Universal Championship. But then they made mention of a title unification match. Kofi said he watched the main event last night and wanted to do the same. No Shield, no New Day, just them two, one-on-one, title for title. This was what the fans wanted, but even then you knew WWE wasn't going to do it. It wasn't in their best interest to do it, nor did they like pleasing the fans more than once a week. You thought you were going to get an amazing show after WrestleMania? Good one. Rollins accepted the challenge and it was on. This was overhyped, but everyone knew what was going to happen. The action was fast-paced with both men knowledgeable about each other. Rollins knew Kofi well and vice versa. What it comes down to was timing. After the commercial break, the edge was starting to go Rollins' way. His main event experience helped. The action was going back and forth, but then the bar interfered and it was clear that this wasn't going to end with a result. It just couldn't because these two just won their titles. That doesn't make sense, but then again, a title unification match doesn't make sense. But they did it anyways. Kofi and Seth ended up teaming up and beating the bar to end the week on top. This was a wonderful week for both men, and it felt like WWE was actually listening to the fans because regardless of what we say about the
year. 2019 in the beginning was a time where they were clearly doing things differently. The new WWE champion came to SmackDown the next night. They were still excited and hyped that Big E did the splits again. That's how happy they were. The New Day had too much respect and appreciation. Xavier Woods was about to cry just talking about him, and the new champion mentioned his family. It was all about celebrating the night when the bar interrupted again. They took credit for Kofi keeping his title the previous night, and they wanted to challenge and brought out Drew McIntyre. This is another W for Kofi Kingston. He looked strong out there, but then again, this is 2019 WWE. They probably didn't know who should challenge him for the title at this point, although that would change. The following week, Kevin Owens hosted a show and praised Kofi for winning the title and congratulated him. Big E was missing, and it was because of injury. He was a notable absence, not only because of them being the New Day, but also because Kevin Owens used this to his advantage. He told them that they need backup and wanted to help them. He called himself Big O, the fans wanted it, and they made him an associate of the New Day. Owens fit in well, and in some ways, he eased the transition without Big E. This is notable to Big E. He didn't enjoy the story, feeling it was disrespectful. He was in a hospital, and the first moment he turns on the TV, he sees them moving on and leaving him without support. Kevin Owens, meanwhile, was winning matches for the New Day and doing well as an honorary member. This was short-lived though, and Kevin Owens turned on them the following week, setting his sights on the most coveted prize. He ripped the shirt, disrespected the fabric of the New Day literally and figuratively. He destroyed Kofi Kingston, sent him into the barricade, beat him up like Kofi stole the title off of him. And regardless of the New Day or not, this was about the WWE Championship. He had enough of this. Kofi tried to fight back, but he was overwhelmed, and Kevin Owens tried to hit the apron powerbomb, but Xavier Woods made this safe. He took it instead. The roster was a bit light at this point. It wasn't really light, it's just WWE got a lot of guys on Raw, and whoever was on Smackdown was heel. So it wasn't a good balance. Kevin Owens turning heel wouldn't have happened if AJ Styles was on the roster. You know, it really makes sense for them to go with KO because, you know, he's legitimate, he's one of the bigger talents on the roster and stuff like that. They could have gone bigger, of course, but whatever. Kofi came out the following week throwing pancakes like nothing happened, and apparently Big E and Xavier Woods weren't in the hospital. They were doing well. I personally didn't like this because even though the New Day were positive and happy and all that, he had to get angry because his best friends were taken away from him. This promo should have happened the week after WrestleMania because Michael Cole's asking him about winning the title. He said that they're the guys that proved that the impossible can become impossible. Michael Cole hyped up WrestleMania and called it a magical moment, something that very few can have that kind of moment. You deserve a chance intensified. Kofi was feeling all kinds of emotions at this point, and it felt like he was looking at the title victory like it happened yesterday. And then Michael Cole mentioned Kevin Owens. He said that a lot of people said that he should have seen this coming and even blamed himself a bit for this. The New Day allows for people to get second chances. He believed that Kevin Owens wanted to change, but he did what he usually did. Since KO wanted to do this for the title, Kofi challenged him to a title match at Money in the Bank. Kevin Owens interrupted and the fans were booing. He had heat. KO had some problems with Kofi. It's the fact that while the title win was great, he can't believe that Kofi is the champion. Kofi himself doesn't even believe this. He's way in over his head. Xavier Woods came in and attacked, but Owens managed to drop him with a super kick and run away. This is always going to be the storyline. Kofi overcoming the odds and having his detractors come on to bring him back down. This was the storyline. It couldn't be anything else because it would never make sense for it to be something else. Kevin Owens hosted the Kevin Owens show later on, and he came out with no designs and stuff like that. It was all serious. He said Kofi is drowning in the pressure and said that he's going to relieve him of his problems by taking the title away from him. As for the guest, it was supposed to be Xavier Woods, but he couldn't come out. He interviewed the Toys instead and tried to imply that the New Day were jealous of Kofi. It got to the point where Kofi came out pissed and destroyed Kevin Owens, throwing him over a table, slamming a chair on him, and he sent him running. But before Kevin Owens could get his title shot though, Daniel Bryan got his. This is a tremendous match. It's very low-key, and because of the TV style, it obviously couldn't top the WrestleMania match. That didn't work. It was still pretty good though, and Kofi moved on. On SmackDown, Sami Zayn was trying to convince Kofi to give AJ Styles the title shot, and he was telling him not to do it, and ended up asking for a title shot himself. He thought that the fans deserve a WWE champion who was going to tell them the truth. The WWE champion said he was a fighting champion and wanted to put it on the line against either of them. This ended up being a triple threat match. Now, WWE is doing a lot of random things at the time. This was one of them. It just came from out of nowhere. I remember watching this one and actually thinking Sami Zayn had a chance. Not because of his status, but because of how it happened. This guy was in his worst era, yet they almost convinced me he was winning the title. This match was good. It was pretty good. The only problem is that no one cares about it because it happened on a random Smackdown. The reason why I thought Kofi was losing was because WWE was random at the time. Anything could have happened. Kevin Owens attacked Xavier Woods. Zayn took advantage of this and hit so many Blue Thunder bombs that he should have just gotten rid of this trash-ass finisher for not getting that job done. It was horrible. Kofi had the 2007 John Cena Black Magic here, kicking out of everything while Kevin Owens watched on. The worst signature move I've ever seen in storyline. It almost never got him the win. Then Kofi with one Trouble in Paradise gets the win. Kofi said that Kevin Owens wasn't in his head and that he's got hell to pay at Money in the Bank. They had one final confrontation the following week. It was the Kevin Owens show and Kofi wanted KO to be the host. Kofi refused to come out and said that Kofi is finally on his own. Again, he respected Kofi for winning the title and celebrating with his brothers and family, and he told him that reality begins and the only reason he's WWE champion is because of the New Day. That ends this Sunday at Money in the Bank. He called himself the most dangerous man in WWE WWE, and Kofi called him out, and he finally came out. KO was ready for a fight to prove to Kofi that he doesn't have what it takes to keep the title. Owens came down to the ring all hyped up and ended up turning his back. Kofi took advantage when all of a sudden Sami Zayn made the save. Xavier Woods comes in, and even then he was unable to stop them, and even though Kevin Owens had the edge, Kofi still found a way to send him running and show that he's got enough fight in him to bring out his best on Sunday. This was the first real title defense for Kofi. He had been put through hell by Kevin Owens, and through it all he tried to portray the champion as a fraud. He only knew how to get it done once. Great moment and all, but reality is about to strike him hard. Kevin Owens had been at the top. He knows what it's like facing some of the WWE's very best. Kofi doesn't. He doesn't even know how to defend his world championship on pay-per-view. Decent story. It was going to be easy to book this because it was the only way. There's no reason for Kofi to have any other story for his first title defense. If it was somebody who was already established, yeah, it makes sense, but Kofi had been portrayed as an underdog for years. Why would they get away from him when he looked most like that very thing? He was a perfect underdog here. Kofi did admit that he wasn't sure if he would have become champion if it wasn't for the New Day. Xavier Woods motivated him and got him prepared for the big match against KO. Kevin Owens was aggressive early on. He brought a lot of intensity, and Kofi's big mistake was matching it. He was trying to go with him and respond to everything the same way. He was wrestling with anger. The champion was slowing the pace and having more of an advantage to do whatever he wanted, and that didn't mean Owens didn't take risks. He did. The match started to open up with Kofi trying to pick up the pace, but because Owens did work on the back, he was always going to have it targeted. Kofi was doing too much at this point, and it was easy for Owens to come back into it. He tried to hit the Trouble in Paradise, but he was back in the Boston Crab. He hit Trouble in Paradise from out of nowhere. At this point, the challenger was going all out. He was pissed and went for the Swanton Bomb, but Kofi got his knees up. Trouble in Paradise, 1, 2, 3. These two put on something good, but the problem was AJ Styles and Seth Rollins put on a classic, a match that's considered to be one of WWE's best that year. This fouled up, but they did a good job with a simple story. Kofi trying to overcome the odds and experience of Kevin Owens. This storyline was short. It didn't last long because KO probably wasn't even supposed to be a heel for long. With that said, Kofi Kingston moved on and beat Sami Zayn, who took out Big E early on. Paul Heyman came out the briefcase after the match, and Kofi was ready. Then from out of nowhere, Dolph Ziggler returned and obliterated. He destroyed him, and this came from out of nowhere. It was random because Ziggler was away for a couple of months at this point. Some thought he would leave the company too. He took out the champion with a steel chair, and they had to stretcher him out of there. He was broken and beaten, and even then Kofi still got up and walked to the back, even though it served him no purpose to stand up. This led to one of Ziggler's best promos in his entire career. He went out there with all his emotions out and showed a lot of bitterness and disappointment with his career. This guy was basically upset that Kofi did what he couldn't do, or what Kofi did, he was too scared to do. Actually finished the story. He said that it should have been him. Kofi walked into the chamber, he walked out the other side as a star, and it should have been him. He walked into WrestleMania to fight for the WWE Championship, it should have been him. And on that night, he was the better wrestler, the better man, and best of all, something that he isn't used to, he actually won the title. And it should have been him. Even then, Kofi has still outperformed every single critic. The fans admire and respect him, but it should have been him. It should be me as a meme, but this was amazing. Ziggler said that he had no choice but to do it, and he said that he's going to beat Kofi for the title at Stomping Grounds. It didn't take long for Kofi to return. He's back the following week and even beat Kevin Owens. The match was pushed to Super Showdown between Ziggler and Kingston, and at this point he realized that everyone is calling him a fraud for getting lucky and holding the title. He said that while the moment when he won the title was amazing, it was inspiring to help others believe in themselves. And that's what he did when he went to Ghana. He was proud, but then Dolph Ziggler interrupted. He said he respected Kofi too much to beat him up right now, but said that it was about him now. He was complaining about giving everything to WWE, and it was Kofi who got to have the WrestleMania moment. He should have gotten that moment. It should have been him. He called Kofi a hero, but said that the fans are going to realize that it should have been him. The WWE champion mentioned that he actually beat him several times throughout his career, and he knows how it feels to lose, then showed a clip of him relinquishing the United States Championship. If it should have been him, then it would have been him. When things don't go his way, he quits. He walks out and turns his back. He never quit. Unlike Ziggler, he's up for that challenge and said that Ziggler is not going to win a Super Showdown. As long as he's champion, it will never be him. So he showed a clip of 2 weeks ago, and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn came out. The New Day won the match, but Ziggler struck with a super kick after the match. It was an amazing sell. You'd think Kofi became Ziggler himself. It was good. Now, their match at Super Showdown was, their match was pretty good. It wasn't like bad or amazing or anything like that, but it was decent enough. I don't think it was going to be some amazing match because they had plenty of matches in the past and they never really stood out a lot compared to other feuds. Like, if their feud had so many great matches, why can't I name one right now? I can't. Kofi once again proved he could beat the best of them, although Dolph Ziggler in 2019 doesn't fit that narrative. Best and Ziggler 2019 no match. And after Xavier Woods got involved because of Ziggler's attack early on, he hit the Trouble in Paradise to retain the title. Ziggler was upset and complained about how Kofi wasn't a hero. He needed Xavier Woods' help to win and called him a coward. He said that he outperformed him and called him the best WWE champion in history. Yeah, maybe they should have given him the title shot just for that mention. He demanded another match, one-on-one. He wanted a steel cage match. Big E made his return later that week and the New Day was back. They were ready to return to the squared circle as a trio, and Woods was more focused on E3 rather than dealing with Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, and Dolph Ziggler. Kofi wasn't even worried about Ziggler. He beat him once, he could do it again. I mean, it's Dolph Ziggler in the year of 2019. Why would you be worried about him? Ziggler interrupted and mentioned how he praised Kofi for how he earned everything he got, but then he betrayed him and the fans. Best of all, Kofi betrayed himself. And the only reason he's still WWE champion is because is because of Xavier Woods. And now Kofi himself could admit that it should have been Ziggler. This is why he wanted a steel cage match, to prevent any interference. Then everyone will know that without help, Kofi can't beat him. The champion mentioned that Ziggler assaulted Woods earlier. How didn't he expect him to return the favor? Like, you did it earlier on. Zayn and Owens came out. He said that they always enjoy beating up the New Day. And as for Kofi, he said that Ziggler's been saying he's running away and stuff. Stomping Grounds will prove him wrong. The tag team match went the New Day's way, with Kofi Kingston scoring the victory, and Ziggler was still on the whole Super Showdown thing, telling the champion he doesn't deserve to hold the title. He was confident of his chances on Sunday because there's no New Day. He spoke about what he was going to do, but then Kofi mentioned his journey to the title began in a cage, the Elimination Chamber. Regardless, he will beat him at Stomping Grounds. Ziggler didn't want to talk about tonight, he wanted Sunday. The positivity of the New Day, all of that comes to an end. It comes crumbling down because it should have been him. This match at Stomping Grounds was good. It was nice, but I don't like cage matches, especially when this match didn't need to be that. They were better served having another normal match or even something like a ladder match, because it does not bring out the best in Dolph Ziggler and Kofi Kingston to have a steel cage match. Like, yes, their feud was somewhat intense, but they're not that type of wrestlers, you know? The match was decent. It wasn't all that, you know? Like, I'm not gonna hype it up. It wasn't amazing or anything like that. Ziggler almost won the match before Kofi dived through the ropes onto the floor to win the title. With Ziggler out of the way, it was off to another challenger, Samoa Joe. Joe attacked the champion after his matches with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. This came from out of nowhere, but it wasn't that shocking. Joe was a big challenger from 2017 to 2019. He always came around every once in a while to challenge for the title. The following night on Smackdown, Kofi spoke about his cage match with Dolph Ziggler. This wasn't his main focus though, it was Samoa Joe. The match was made for Extreme Rules and Kingston hyped him up as a tough challenger. He called him a shark but said he'll be damned if he'll eat him alive. Dolph Ziggler refused to be overlooked for Samoa Joe, and it should be me. That's what they saw him as. Ziggler said that Kofi knew him well. He knows how good he is, and the champion didn't feel very interested in facing him because he beat him. He called him a coward for jumping through that door and said that he should be champion right now. He revealed that if he beat Kofi tonight in the main event, he'll get added to the Extreme Rules title match, and he mentioned that it's 2 out of 3 falls. Okay, I kind of forgot about this. The 2 out of 3 falls era was horrible. It was so bad because WWE had to hide the action from the commercial break, which is good and all, but it made things a lot more predictable and limited some of the action. It's always gonna be 1-0, 1-1, 2-1. It's not 2-all. It almost never worked that way. This match was good though. These two were capable, but as I said earlier, their matches weren't dropping the ground and being this huge classic. They obviously didn't intend for it on this night, but I'm just saying, you know, like these guys, their feud wasn't like amazing here. Their matches weren't. Nothing about it was that good. The following week, Samoa Joe once again got Kofi Kingston and locked him in the coquina clutch again. Compared to Kevin Owens and Dolph Ziggler, Samoa Joe had his number. He said that he's been a recipient of generosity. This was about Kofi Kingston. He said that the New Day has done so much for him and his title reign. He even mentioned how they'd let go of their title challenges to help him. So Kofi mentioned the previous title defenses and how he won them all by himself. He even told Joe that he's beating him. And since he's talking about help or whatever, what has Samoa Joe done? Lose the US title to Ricochet? He used to be something, now he sneaks around and attacks people from behind. Joe went on a long talk about how Kofi lies about who he is to the fans and tries to portray himself as a good family man. Kofi called him jealous and said he'll never have a moment like he did at WrestleMania to celebrate with his kids. This was simple for Joe. In order to show who Kofi truly is, he should shake his hand after these last 2 weeks where he was choked out. He gave him 5 seconds and said that it'll make him beg for a handshake. Never seen someone so pressed by that. A goofy middle finger. Kofi hits trouble in paradise and stood tall over Samoa Joe. The challenger promised to beat down Kofi and embarrass him before putting him to sleep. He saw himself as someone that the people can rely on to take everything from Kofi Kingston and everything he took away from the fans. Kofi, on the other hand, wasn't worried about anything and thought that he himself got into Samoa Joe's head. This build was bad, I'm not gonna lie, it was so short and rushed. The story wasn't fleshed out, and all I remember is Kofi's hand gesture from this build, you know? Samoa Joe's talking about how Kofi's a fraud similar to Ziggler and how Kevin Owens did, but they did not flesh it out. It felt like an afterthought and took away a lot from this feud. It was a simple story, but it should have been developed more. So at this point, it felt like there was a beast lurking over Kofi Kingston. Paul Heyman even promised to cash in during Extreme Rules, and it felt like that's where WWE was going. This was obviously going to overshadow the story between Kingston and Joe. Joe overwhelmed the champion early on. He was very aggressive but not urgent, and that was the difference with his experience. The champion was trying to pick up the pace, but it wasn't working with Joe being one step ahead. He targeted the hand and stepped right onto it. He had something small, but ended up ruining it because Joe was desperate to keep that advantage he had throughout the match. The match picked up, and right as it was getting started, Kofi has trouble in paradise to retain the title. It felt a bit deflating because the match was getting good. The match was 9 minutes, and just like the feud, it felt unfinished. Samoa Joe is the least threatening challenger Kofi Kingston had, and that's saying something because this man had Dolph Ziggler in the year of 2019 as one of his toughest challengers. But he was getting a feud with someone really notable. Ever since Kingston captured the WWE Championship, a big question surrounding his title reign was always the question of Randy Orton. These two didn't cross paths for months, and it was becoming more obvious what the plan was. In order for Kofi's reign to be legitimized, he had to overcome the Viper, the Apex Predator. Orton got in Kofi's head, beating him in a 6-man tag team match that week on Smackdown. It was the same hurdle Kofi walked into 10 years earlier, and since then, his career wasn't the same. This was something that the champion wanted to fix. He wanted Randy Orton at SummerSlam. He had to worry about his next title defense, but Kofi was more focused on Randy Orton. Kofi told him that he whooped his ass all over the arena in Madison Square Garden, and it was a moment that still gives him goosebumps. It was supposed to be the moment he made it to the main event. Kofi claimed that Orton used his influence to prevent him from entering the main event scene. It almost worked, but through hard work and determination, he made it to the main event scene. Orton straight up said he did use his influence. Why? He's not ready, and he still isn't. He said that Kofi worked hard, but what about him? He worked for 18 years, and he didn't have to work that hard, because all he had to do was be Randy Orton. He didn't have to fake a Jamaican accent and throw pancakes. He's the reason why Kofi had a title match at WrestleMania. Why? Because he was the one that injured Ali. Kofi doesn't deserve that championship, and he could take it from him whenever he wants. So Kofi wanted to put that to the test. He challenged Randy Orton for the WWE Championship at SummerSlam. He accepted, but told him that this fairy tale is coming to an end with an RKO. He tried that a couple of minutes later, but Kofi capitalized on the distraction to hit Trouble in Paradise. He actually had a good match with Joe and Ziggler that week on the WWE Network special called Smackville. And this wasn't going to end any different, but they had a good one. This one, as opposed to the Samoa Joe feud, was long term. The build involved one segment, and that segment alone had more impact than anything Kofi did in the last 3 months. The reason why is because these two had a lot of fury behind their history, as opposed to Kofi and Ziggler hyping up a feud that never went beyond the mid-card. This is what it came down to. Kofi's mid-card struggles could be traced back to one single moment, a moment of error that banished him from the main event scene. A moment that excommunicated him from the top of the WWE and casted him as a pure mid-card talent that was probably never going to overcome these politics at play. This feud was probably never going to happen. Nobody really put much thought into it, seeing as Kofi Kingston was never going to win a title. This was one of the first matches in the title reign to feel like a true main event. They didn't main event the show, but it felt like a big deal. Kofi was a risk taker during this match. It felt like he was more valiant and courageous as opposed to his other matches. The match kicked up, Orton hit a super RKO, and it seemed like the title was gone. I think I believed Orton was winning before watching it. Orton had a plan. He was going to do something to make good on it, but then he saw Kofi's family, and they both got counted out. The fans were pissed with this one, and Kofi got all angry and aggressive with the Viper. He was using a kendo stick. He dropped him with the Trouble in Paradise, and this was only the beginning of the feud. It wasn't an amazing match. It was decent, but that finish took away a lot. I know they used it to progress the story. It's understandable. Randy Orton lashed onto this, talking about how Kofi ran away from a fight at SummerSlam. He claimed that Kofi ran away because he can't beat him. He ran away from a fight in front of his two sons, and when they grow up, they're going to ask the question, why did you run away from that big scary guy? He'll tell them that he can't beat Randy Orton. The New Day are facing the Revival. Why don't they join them to make it a 6-man tag team match? This worked in his favor, with the Viper laying out all the members of the New Day and standing tall with the Revival. Orton had a lot of anger towards Kofi for running away from a fight. He proved himself right after Kofi took those RKOs. He's stupid, just as he said 11 years ago. Same thing on Raw. Him and the Revival took out Xavier Woods, and this again proved that Kofi Kingston was stupid. All of a sudden, the champion came in from behind and dropped him with Trouble in Paradise. He wanted to take him out like he did to Woods, but then Dash Wilder came in, and this led to Orton escaping even though he got some chair shots. Kofi was set on once again going through Orton and overcoming him. He had more confidence than ever. All Orton could say about this is stupid, stupid, stupid. He wanted to prove it, the fact that Kofi Kingston is stupid, but felt like he had to do it at Clash of Champions. Orton said he got some fan mail and wanted to share it. It was from his son. Kofi Kingston's son sent a mail and said he should stop hurting his dad. He doesn't need to send another letter though, because he realized the sender of this letter is at the hotel. All he could do is pay him a visit now. They brawled and Orton got the upper hand. He dropped him right onto the concrete floor, and Big E took notice of this and wanted to fight in honor of his guy. That partnership between Orton and the Revival was starting to become something, and they helped him beat Big E. Orton was happy that he took out Kofi and even challenged him to a fight, knowing that he might not come out. He still did, but got attacked by the Revival, and this led to Orton calling him stupid. He told him he's beating him for the title in front of his friends and family. Kofi tried to put up a fight, but he was overwhelmed, and Orton dropped him with a super RKO. There was an advantage for Randy Orton here, but they still had to go to MSG. Kofi was happy to come back to the arena, but Orton had enough hearing about it. He called him stupid and said that he always talks about MSG in WrestleMania 35. He said he's taking the title because he has always pretended to be someone for 10 years. Whether it's the Jamaican accent and the dreads or the power of positivity BS.
and he had enough. Orton was prepared and caught Kofi Kingston on the trap once again. Orton thought he had him, but Kofi had too much fight on this night. He refused to be humiliated on this night, a night of remembrance. He hit the boom drop from the top of the crowd right through that table onto Orton just like he did 10 years ago. So that's the build. This build was much better. It's the best build that Kofi Kingston had during his title reign. Kofi Mania doesn't count, obviously, because it happened right before. This was most definitely the best build because he was facing a top-tier talent in Randy Orton. They were building it up. It was the biggest story on Smackdown. Everything about it was big. It was good. This match really felt like the one where Kofi would lose his title. That's what I thought at the time, because even though it made sense for him to finally beat Orton, it felt like it was meant for Orton to win the title. I remember my personal opinion, my prediction at the time, it was for Randy Orton to win this match. This match is better than SummerSlam. I do think they should have made it more intense. It should have been a big final match between them as opposed to a normal match. Plus, it was too long. With that said, it mostly followed the same style as SummerSlam, but in a better way. They paced it better and had more interesting spots. Kofi finally overcame Orton to end the feud on top with one Trouble in Paradise. And if you're like, why aren't you talking about the match? There's not much to talk about. I watched it here. It was a bit too long. Yeah, they traded spots. Orton took control. There's not much to say about it. He moved on, and at this point, he did what he wanted with the title reign. Randy Orton was the big story. This feud was good. I think it was the best representation of Kofi Kingston as champion. He was someone that took on any and all comers, fought them, and it finally closed the storyline between Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston, which is something people have wondered about for years. You know, what if Kofi finally faced Randy Orton? He finally beat him here. I thought it was going to be somewhat similar to the Drew McIntyre story a year later, where Orton would actually win the title from him by the end of it. But that wasn't to be. Other than that, I'd say it was good. It legitimized Kofi's WWE Championship reign. It felt like the best way to go about it. Yeah, Orton could have won the title here and whatever, but it really made sense for Kofi to avenge his loss and move on. The Beast Brock Lesnar challenged him to a title match later that week. This was Lesnar's first appearance in SummerSlam, and I think it was always meant to be Kofi and Brock. Since the moment he won the title, Kofi was a fighting champion. He took on any and all comers, so Brock Lesnar was no different. This was basically the end. The match was hyped up as the first main event on Fox. Smackdown was moving to Fox and was going to be on Friday nights. This was a statement that WWE was going to make the show much bigger than it was in the past. That's what it was here. Now, Kofi was eager for this challenge. He was ready. I was a bit hyped for it at the time, I remember, because, well, you know, Brock Lesnar on Smackdown is a big deal. I believe it was the first time he wrestled on TV in 15 years. Other than that, I thought it was the end, you know. I didn't think Kofi was going to win the title here or anything like that. But I thought he was going to put on a good fight. They were going to have him go out on top. He was going to go out a fighting champion. Well, he lost in 5 seconds. I'm legitimately shocked at this point. I remember it was like, what the hell? It was crazy to me, and the thing is, this is one of the worst things WWE... Alright, I'm a bit too dramatic. Let's rewind and go back. This was one of the dumbest things WWE did in recent years. The reason why is because of the fact that Kofi Kingston was like a respected wrestler. And not just a respected wrestler, he had a respectable title reign in the sense of, like, on paper, he beat these challengers clean, won Trouble in Paradise, all that. Yeah, he never got to show any of that here. And the worst part in all of this is the fact that there was no rematch. Kofi lost like that. They moved on to freaking Cain Velasquez to do a feud from 2010, but they did Kofi wrong here simply based on the fact that he never got a chance. If the match lasted 5 minutes, would some people have complained? Of course. There's always going to be people that complain. Even if Kofi lost, people were going to complain. However, if you put on more of a fight, hit a Trouble in Paradise, Brock kicks out, boom, Brock gets up, drops him, Kofi fights back, Trouble in Paradise again, still not enough, goes for a third, Brock catches him with F5, whatever, that would have been much better. That would have been the story of the title reign. You know, Kofi's fighting and fighting and fighting and doing what he can to win. But in the end here, it just doesn't work. It really would have matched the title reign well. It would have been a great way to end the title reign. But they didn't. Like, I don't understand it. Why they gotta do a squash match for a title reign that lasted 6 months? It doesn't make sense to me because this is the WWE Championship. It's not the US title, the freaking 24/7 Championship or anything like that. This is the WWE's most prestigious prize, the biggest prize in the company, the WWE Championship. I know they prioritize the Universal title, but in my mind, regardless of how the WWE title's booked, it will always be the #1 title to me. And to see them do this with a champion that held the title for 6 months it's kind of messed up. I'm sure Kofi was bitter about it, but not to the point where it affected him. However, I just think they should have gave it a much better ending. I think Kofi Kingston, of all people, did deserve a proper ending to this title reign, going out as a fighting champion. It was so bad, it kind of showed people, hey, we're going to do whatever the hell we want. To hell with your ideas, to hell with your optimism. We're going to ruin it, we're going to burn it to the ground. And I'm like, bro, why we got to do this? Especially for a feud from UFC that was 10 years ago. I could watch Cain Velasquez and Brock Lesnar fight for real. Why would I want to watch it for fake?
Why would I want to watch a pro wrestling version of it? We could watch it for real on freaking UFC Fight Pass, wherever the hell it's called. And that's what was messed up. It's the fact that a 6-month title reign, regardless of Kofi Kingston, you know, he's one of the most respected wrestlers of that era, to this day still is. But regardless of the wrestler, even if it's Jinder Mahal, freaking Jack Swagger 2010, for someone to get squashed like that and have him move on after a long title reign, one of the longest title reigns in the last 10 years, is bizarre. It's messed up. It's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. That's the industry for you, right? All right, with that said, Kofi Kingston's WWE Championship reign, I remember it much worse than I did initially. Like, it was much worse when I remembered it, but it turned out to be much better than I actually remembered it to be. The reason why is because I don't know, I feel like I came into it hating on it a little. It wasn't good. On paper, it was. It's hard to describe, but on paper, Kofi Kingston's title reign is very good. You look at the challengers, yeah, I know, Dolph Ziggler in 2019. Dolph Ziggler wouldn't be a formidable opponent in 2015, let alone 2019, but just look at it on paper. He beat Daniel Bryan twice, Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe, Randy Orton, and through all of this, he beat all of those guys with one trouble in paradise. My problem with the title reign is the fact that they never had him headline number one. He had decent matches with all of these guys. I think all these guys, he had somewhat decent matches with them. I do like the fact that he won the title. I don't like the presentation. You know, I felt like he shouldn't have been throwing pancakes all the time, like at times here and there, but they kind of ruined it with that. Other than that, matches were solid, decent, but they should have ended it in a better way. I really think Kofi Kingston deserved to end it in a better way. Not just because of the fact that he's Kofi Kingston, but because of the fact that he went through all those challengers, such as Randy Orton, Kevin Owens, and all these guys, just for it to end with an F5 in like 10 seconds or whatever, or 8 seconds or whatever. It's stupid. It's messed up. Other than that, I will say, solid run for someone that was going to hold the title only one time. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have much to complain about because he probably wasn't even going to have this title reign in the first place. Kofi deserved it, you know? Kofi deserved this title reign. I'm glad he got to experience it. It's actually better than I remember, but it's not that good because of the credibility, I'd say, you know? Like, you can't feud with Dolph Ziggler for like 3 months or 2 months and say a title reign's big. Like, I just can't say it. It wasn't a big title reign. It did good for Kofi Kingston, you know? That was nice. All right, with that said, the original plan was actually to have Kofi lose to Brock since he won the title. So the week he won the title, the day or whatever, he was going to lose to Brock Lesnar. It was always destined to be that way. That said, I did think there was a big possibility of Shane McMahon winning that title because WWE in 2019 was weird. So yeah. All right, what do you guys think of Kofi Kingston's title reign? Please comment down below. And that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the boom drop on the like button and perhaps the trouble in paradise on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.